Chapter 389. Grand Xia Imperial City, Jiming Manor. The day of the great battle was getting closer and closer, but the manor was surprisingly quiet. In the study, Ning Chen spent most of his time recuperating and adjusting his breath, preparing for the upcoming battle. Mu Qingxue came, and his silence became more and more frequent. Most of the time, he didn't say a word. He just stood quietly in the room, looking at the direction of the palace, lost in memories and contemplation. Xia Zi was still in closed-door cultivation. Inside and outside the secret chamber, the demonic energy was surging. The emperor had entered the demonic path and was doing his best to fight for the last hope of the human world. This was a crucial battle. The three of them carried the hopes of many powerhouses in the human world. With Hell King's terrifying strength, the human world couldn't see the slightest light. This battle would be the most crucial confrontation between mankind and the gods. Inside the study, Ruoshi pushed the door open and came in. She brought a brewed bitter tea and placed it beside Ji Ming. "Marquis, does your head still hurt?" Ruoshi's beautiful face flashed with a touch of unbearable pity. "It's okay, I can still hold on." Ning Chen opened his eyes and calmly said. Ruoshi picked up the bitter tea, tears unconsciously overflowed from her eyes. "Ruoshi's status is low. I am indebted to the Marquis for not abandoning me and staying in the manor. I am not qualified to say anything, but Ruoshi still pleads the Marquis. No matter what, you must come back alive." She knew the enemy the Marquis was facing this time was different from the past. This was a real god. Whether in myth or reality, mankind had never won against a god. Ning Chen got up and walked to the window. Looking at the blood moon hanging high in the sky, he asked, "Ruoshi, do you know when the darkest time of the night is?" Ruoshi shook her head and whispered, "I don't know." Ning Chen's eyes flashed with exhaustion. "It's before dawn." This was his last responsibility. The human world needed a hope. He couldn't guarantee whether he could come back alive, but even if they couldn't, he would leave a trace of light for the human world. The human world couldn't be destroyed, the dawn would eventually come. In the homeland of Western Buddha, outside the heavenly Buddha mountain, the demon temple, and the celestial palace, a figure in a blue robe walked over with an extraordinary temperament. "Eastern Divine Land, Grand Xia's Prince Yen requests an audience." In front of Buddha mountain, the Prince Yen stopped and calmly said, "Since you've come to request an audience, you should know the rules of Buddha mountain." "Please enter the formation," replied a Buddha mountain attendant as he stepped aside. Prince Yen walked forward. His expression was as calm as water, without any ripples. A man quietly followed behind with a sword rack on her back. A simple and unadorned sword chi revolved around her, making her look extraordinary. The three arrays of Buddha mountain were tests that those who had not been summoned had to go through in order to seek an audience with the Light Senior. In the past few hundred years, only one person had succeeded. The first formation was the Heart Demon Refining Formation. The moon could be seen in the clear sky, and the fragrance of the lotus was faintly discernible. The two people who entered the formation slowly walked over. The refining formation disturbed the heart and trapped the person who entered the formation. However, the two of them didn't stop at all when they walked past the array. The array that had blocked countless geniuses' inner demons didn't work at all. How could this be? The Discipline Pavilion Master frowned. Confusion flashed across his face. Buddha Mountain had existed for tens of thousands of years, and countless geniuses had come here. However, they had all suffered in the mental demon refining array. This was the first time he had encountered such a situation. In the second formation of Buddha Mountain, 4 bodhisattvas appeared. Their powerful auras were extremely shocking. Each of them was infinitely close to the third Khanate disaster. They were only one step away from successfully entering the third Khanate disaster. The bodhisattvas blocked the way. Only by breaking through could one see the face of the Buddha. "Ah man," said Prince Yen calmly. Man nodded and put down her sword rack. She didn't say anything and obediently retreated from the battle. "The 4 deities of the competition pavilion would like to learn from you," said the leading bodhisattva as he stepped forward. "Please." Prince Yen stretched out his hand and said politely. As soon as he said this, the atmosphere became tense. The battle was about to begin. The four deities of the competition pavilion were going to battle a legend of the great Xia dynasty. The green and red swords were drawn. The four of them moved, and the indestructible body of the Vajra clashed with the two swords. The sounds of battle rang out. Prince Yan's swords were light and quick, but they were heavy in an instant. The constantly changing sword moves didn't stagnate at all. His attacks were sharp and forceful, and his defense was watertight. The sword on the divine prefecture sword shone again. The powerful four deities of the Buddhist sect couldn't gain the upper hand for a while. There's actually such an amazing sword in the world. The eyes of the competition pavilion lord flashed with surprise. Such extraordinary swordsmen were rare even in the homeland of Western Buddha. At this moment, the light in the sky gathered. An illusory light figure appeared. Although the face couldn't be seen clearly, the unusually strong pressure revealed the identity of the person. Light deity, the discipline pavilion lord and the competition pavilion lord said respectfully. Jing Feng, Jia Lu, if the two of you watch carefully, it might be able to help your cultivation in unexpected ways, said a gentle voice from the projection. Yes. The two of them accepted the order and replied. The light figure dissipated, and the pressure dissipated. The discipline pavilion lord and the competition pavilion lord stood up and looked at the battle in the distance. This time, they were much more serious. In the four deities trap formation, the light from the two swords was dazzling. The four deities of the Buddhist sect were light and heavy. One was fast, the other was heavy, and the other was heavy. It was shocking. When they were fast, they were like afterimages. When they were heavy, they were heavy. The competition pavilion lord and the four deities fought 4 against 1, but the more they fought, the more shocked they became. The four deities are going to lose. In the distance, the competition pavilion lord sighed softly. This person obviously hadn't used his full strength. It was just a competition, but the four deities were already unable to withstand it. This swordsman from the alien realm was definitely not weaker than the pavilion lords of Buddha Mountain. It wasn't that the four deities were too weak. It was just that under the suppression of the two swords in this person's hands, they couldn't even use half of their strength. Fast, accurate, simple, and amazing moves. The position of each sword was not the slightest bit off. It was really an eye-opener. He had watched swords for his whole life, and today, he finally knew how to use them. In the battle, there was a clang. The green sword Thousand June broke through the trap. One of them flew out, and the tip of the sword reached the throat. It stopped an inch away. Thank you for letting me win, Prince Yen said calmly. Amitba, please. The four stopped and respectfully stepped aside. Thank you. Prince Yen thanked them. He waved his hand, and the green and red swords returned to their sheaths. He stepped forward. A man went forward and picked up the sword rack again. She smiled at the four of them and followed. Junior sister, don't look, the leading golden bodhisattva glanced at the girl behind him and said. The girl looked away. Regret flashed across her face. She said, this girl is really a Buddhist talent. What a pity. Her state of mind is clear. No matter which path of cultivation she takes, she will be the most beautiful jade. If this girl has fate with Buddha Mountain, she will definitely come again in the future, the golden bodhisattva said calmly. The two who were far away did not hear the bodhisattva's words. The third battle of Buddha Mountain was here. It was the last test before meeting the Light Venerable. It was also the most difficult test. When they reached the top of Buddha Mountain, they stepped into the battle. There was no one in front of them. Prince Yen was not anxious at all. He waited patiently. At this moment, Buddhist rain fell from the sky. Lotuses bloomed on the ground. The golden Buddhist light was dazzling. Then, a brilliant figure slowly descended. He had a holy aura and a solemn Buddha appearance. The last test. Please, the Buddha said. Please. Prince Yan's expression turned serious when he saw that the Buddha was not ordinary. He waved his right hand. The sword frame trembled and Ning Yuan flew out. Immediately, a strong force entered his body. He activated all his skills and rose to the extreme. The Buddha moved. Lotuses bloomed with each step. The ground under him rose continuously. In the next moment, a ray of light flashed through the Buddhist reign. The palm chi was shocking. Prince Yen waved his sword to block the attack. With a bang, the Buddhist lotuses around the two of them shattered. They turned into golden stars and scattered. The Buddha's palm shook the divine sword. One was as heavy as Mount Tai, while the other was as heavy as Ning Yuan. This was the most extreme collision. It was a battle of moves. It was even more measurable. There were geniuses in the world, such as the legends of the Xia dynasty and the legends of the Barren City sword. They could not be measured by cultivation. Especially when they had a sword in hand, they were almost invincible. The Buddha was also extraordinary. He used his palm to shake the sword. He was not at a disadvantage. The sword was fast, the palm was fast. The sword was strong, the palm was strong. In the blink of an eye, more than 10 moves had passed. The two of them were still evenly matched. The sword and palm clashed loudly. The aftershocks surged and the Buddhist lotuses scattered. Bodhi heart meditation, in a thought. The Buddha used his ultimate move. The scattered Buddhist lotuses reformed. In a thought, the supreme Buddhist Dharma appeared once again. The swastika appeared and spun around the two of them. Thousands of lotuses corresponded to each other and shone brightly. One sword forbids martial arts, no Tao in the world. Prince Yen waved his sword and used the same ultimate move. Endless black light spread out. The forbidding martial arts and destroying Tao appeared once again. With a bang, the two of them retreated. Then, the Buddhist light rose again and a supreme golden scroll descended from the sky. The golden scroll spread out and Buddhist words filled the sky. Each word was a mantra. They turned into Bodhisattva merciful eyes or Vajra glaring eyes. The legendary Buddhist Dharma appeared around the Buddha. Buddha merciful voyage, none wrong. Thousands of Buddhas entered the mortal world. The Buddhist Dharma proved the great way. The Buddhist light filled the sky and lit up the world. Prince Yen squinted his eyes. The Ning Yuan shook and 3 swords flew out from the sword rack not far away. The Ning Yuan trembled and turned into shooting stars. For swords move the world, heaven and earth fall together. The sword light fell and the move moved the world again. Immediately, the 4 swords shook the 4 directions. The Buddha shook and the ground collapsed. The 2 extremes collided. The sky and earth were miserable. At the top of the Buddha mountain, rocks kept falling and crisscrossing, reaching thousands of feet away. When the dust settled, the turbulent Buddha mountain calmed down again. The battle ended in a draw. Extraordinary swordsman, said the Buddha. You praise me too much, said Prince Yen calmly. Ha! The Buddha smiled faintly. In the dazzling light, the Buddha image changed. A young Buddha with hair walked out. His aura was many times stronger than before. Light Venerable, the head of Tianfu Mountain, the most powerful cultivator at the peak of the 3 disasters. He was on par with the master of the demon temple and the palace lord of the divine palace. He's so young, muttered Ah Man when she saw Light Venerable's original form. She glanced at him curiously. Light Venerable smiled. What a pure girl. Since he reached the peak of the 3 disasters, it was the first time he saw someone who didn't feel his pressure at all. Chapter 390. The legendary figure of the Grand Xia and the Buddhist lands Light Venerate met for the first time on Tianfu Mountain. They stood facing each other. May I ask why Benefactor has come? Asked the Light Venerate calmly. Xia Yan has come to ask the Light Venerate to help open the spatial boundary between the Western Buddha homeland and the Eastern Divine Prefecture, said Prince Yen. Oh? A strange look appeared in the Light Elder's eyes as he said, with your level of cultivation, you should be able to clearly feel the strange pressure coming from the divine prefecture of the eastern region. Without a doubt, the Netherworld King has descended. Now that the space between the two regions has been opened, it will be a great threat to the homeland of West Buddha. Prince Yen didn't waver. The Light Venerate should know that with the Nether King's power, opening the spatial boundary between the two domains is as easy as raising a hand. Avoiding it won't solve any problems. The Light Venerate sighed. With my power, I can only open a crack at most. It's impossible for a human to pass through. What do you want to send over? A sword. Prince Yan's gaze was grave. The blood moon hung high in the sky. The day of the battle was right in front of them. The atmosphere in the Marquis manor also became heavy. Before the appointed time arrived, Ningchen walked out of the Marquis manor and rushed towards the northwest. In Azure Frost Valley, Ningchen appeared and walked into Thousand Snow Lake. Dao Kuei had set up a formation to conceal all auras, making it difficult for the Nether King to find him. Mu Qiansheng walked over. Looking at the plainclothed figure on the lake, a trace of emotion flashed across his handsome face. He had still come. You have to think carefully. Your soul is too heavily injured. Once you retrieve it, it won't be able to hold on for too long. It will dissipate, reminded Mu Qiansheng. I need to focus all my strength on this battle. With this soul here, it will affect me. As he spoke, Ningchen raised his hand and gently swiped it. The frozen lake cracked open, and an extremely cold air assaulted his face. The life scroll revolved, and the phoenix body that had sunk to the bottom of the lake slowly rose up. In the next moment, a sleeping red figure appeared, reappearing in the world. The cry of the phoenix could be faintly heard, and its life force scattered. At this moment, the yin-yang reversal, the 4 scrolls of reincarnation, poured a vast amount of life force into the phoenix body, forcibly supporting the dissipating soul. A moment later, the phoenix's body scattered, turning into specks of starlight that merged into the main body. The heavenly soul returned, and all of its power was gathered. As the 3 souls gathered together, the intense pain in his divine sense gradually disappeared. Ningchen turned and looked at the young man in front of him. He said, "Thank you. Do you need my help?" The moment they passed each other, Mu Qiansheng asked. Ningchen stopped moving and revealed an imperceptible smile as he replied, "This time, Ningchen won't harm my friends again." As her voice fell, she left. After several steps, she vanished without a trace. Mu Qiansheng turned around and looked in the direction of the former's departure. He sighed softly in his heart. Just how many people would have to be sacrificed in order to end this great calamity? In the deepest part of the royal palace of the Great Xia dynasty, dense mist lingered and purple qi surged. Sentiments floated above a dragon-patterned cauldron made of purple gold. The entire blade had already turned purple. The dynasty's 1,000 years of fate had almost all been transferred into the blade. Zhi Ming walked over and looked at the divine weapon on the cauldron. He clenched his fist and the entire imperial city shook. The 1,000 years of fate that had protected the Great Xia dynasty left the central dragon vein. Above the imperial city, the purple qi that symbolized the Great Xia dynasty's fate quickly retreated and disappeared. In the Weiyang Palace, Zhang Sun felt the tremors in the palace. He stood up and looked at the dragon vein. His eyes dimmed slightly. Sentiments entered his hand and the wind and snow surged, sealing the overflowing fate. Below the purple-gold dragon-patterned cauldron, the ground cracked and a heavy aura appeared. The 1,000 years of Great Xia's foundation was revealed. One by one, the Xiantian realm and even the 3 disaster realm experts opened their eyes. Instantly, the space shook, unable to withstand the rapidly increasing pressure. Previous martial marquises, previous consecrators, one after another walked out. There were a total of 9 of them. This was the foundation hidden in the deepest part of the Great Xia dynasty. It was the final strength that could not be used unless the country was destroyed. Great Xia had such a foundation, Northern Meng had it, and even the barbarian dynasty had it. Only with the suppression of the dynasty's fate could it hide from the reckoning of time. Now that the fate of Great Xia had disappeared, the hidden strength had no choice but to reveal itself. Nether King. The leader of the group, a previous martial Marquis who should have died hundreds of years ago, looked at the blood moon in the sky. A heavy expression flashed through his eyes. So it was him who had descended. Junior, knowing destiny greets Marquis Zhiga, said Ningchen respectfully. In the 1,000 years of Great Xia's history, generation after generation of martial marquises had all stopped before reaching the Xiantian realm. However, there were always exceptions, and Marquis Zhiga was one of them. The title of Zhiga had been bestowed upon him by the 5th Xia Emperor. It symbolized the desire of the entire world to stop fighting. Marquis Zhiga did not disappoint. He had spent his entire life on the battlefield, helping the Great Xia quell countless wars. In his later years, after Marquis Zhiga had shed the heavy burden of being a martial marquis, he had once again attempted to break through to the Xiantian realm. In a short 10 years, he had reached the 3-disaster realm. In the end, due to his lifespan reaching its end, he had chosen to hibernate under the purple-gold dragon-patterned cauldron, becoming a foundation to continue protecting the Great Xia. Young Junior, you've already surpassed me. Marquis Zhiga looked at the youth in front of him, gratified. The Great Xia's juniors had not disappointed him. The laws of heaven and earth have been suppressed by the power of the Underworld King. We have a bit more time, said a middle-aged man dressed in king robes. That's good. Otherwise, wouldn't it be regretful if we just disappeared like this? Asked a consecrator from 100 years ago. Let's go. Before we leave, let's finish what we need to do, said Marquis Zhiga calmly. That's exactly what I was thinking. With that, the 9 of them transformed into streaks of light that shot through the air above the imperial city. They were like shooting stars in the night sky, dazzling and eye-piercing. Knowing destiny greets seniors. Ningchen bowed, respectfully sending the 9 of them off. At the same time, Qing Ning, Xia Zi, and the others also bowed, their expressions dim as they sent off the Great Xia's seniors. 9 powerful auras descended from the Eternal Night God sect. They broke through the sect's grand formation and entered. A great battle shook the world. The 9 experts had joined hands, using the last of their strength to fight the Underworld King. There was no doubt that they would be defeated. In the face of a god, even heaven and earth were suppressed. Humanity's resistance quietly disappeared after unleashing its full power. A broken sword stopped in front of the Underworld King's chest. Marquis Zhiga's body gradually disappeared. He had reached his final moment. Human, what is your name? Great Xia, Marquis Zhiga. His final answer turned to dust as time passed. The martial Marquis of the Great Xia would not rest until he died. In the Knowing Destiny Marquis residence, Ningchen glanced at the 2 people beside him and said, "Let's go. It's our turn." Yes. Xia Zi and Mu Qingxue nodded and left together. The cold wind blew into the distance under the moonlight. This battle would determine the future of the human world. The human world needed hope, a glimmer of hope that pointed to the light. The demonic mark between the eyebrows of the emperor was as red as blood. The demonic qi around him was unprecedentedly oppressive. He had released the demonic qi that had been suppressed in the forbidden land of the Great Xia for thousands of years. The emperor's last will could not be preserved for long. The woman was as beautiful as before, her skin as smooth as ice and her bones as jade. She was a descendant of the Zine dynasty, the one whom Knowing Destiny had fallen in love with. She had forgotten her past and became the first of the younger generation to step into the Xiantian realm. Today, she had also stepped onto the path of blasphemy. She didn't say why and nobody knew. The strongest combination, foundation, speed, and destruction. In order to resist the god, the 3 of them gave everything they had. They even bet the future of the Great Xia, just to bring a glimmer of hope to the human world. In the Qizhou Mountains, a black aura lingered. The Underworld King descended with his hands behind his back. There was no emotion on his cold and flawless face. The supreme god of the 7 Despair Sky Realm had arrived as promised. He did not attack the Taotai, but waited quietly for the strongest challenger to arrive. The human world was filthy, and destruction was inevitable. However, the gods were happy to accept human resistance. Otherwise, it would be boring to rebuild the human world. Just as the wind rose, the sound of footsteps could be heard from afar. 3 silhouettes slowly walked over. One was calm, one was unhurried, and the last one was cold. These 3 were the strongest. Today, they were going to challenge the divinity. Finally, you're here, the underworld king turned around and said lightly to the 3 people. At the same time, in the homeland of West Buddha, the Light Lord stood on the peak of Tianfo mountain with his holy staff. Prince Yen and Man stood behind him, waiting for the Light Lord to make a move. The Buddha staff shone brightly, illuminating the world. The young Buddha activated all his martial arts and condensed qi into his palm. He poured it into the smoke. Suddenly, an aura that was equal to the world circulated and disappeared into the void. The next moment, the space trembled violently. Everything was flickering. Ripples spread out, showing signs of instability. What does that bald ass want to do? The moment the world changed, Zi Tiangong's expression turned cold. He looked at Tianfo mountain, cold light flashing in his eyes. Was he trying to draw the attention of the underworld king by opening the boundary between the 2 regions? At the same time, in the demon temple, the demon Buddha also sensed the changes on Tianfo mountain. He couldn't hide his anger. Damn that bald ass, what was he thinking? On the peak of Tianfo mountain, the Light Lord used all his strength. The trembling space collapsed inch by inch. The boundary between the 2 regions was finally opened, showing an endless passage. "Ah man," said Prince Yen. "Yes." A man nodded and strode forward. With a flip of her delicate hand, a green and gorgeous sword appeared amidst the surging blood mist. In an instant, the quintessence of water, wind, lightning, and fire surged out, and it swept out strand after strand of heavy pressure. The knowing destiny constitution was cold and couldn't merge with the origin of Ignis. Man nurtured the sword for him. Now that the sword was complete, she returned it. The sword flew out and turned into a beam of light, disappearing into the space crack in the blink of an eye. In the divine prefecture, the space cracked. A blood-red sword light fell from the sky. Sensing the aura of its original owner, it flew away quickly. On Mount Chizhou, Ning Chen sensed it. Looking at the sword falling from the sky, a strange light flashed in his eyes. It was it. The sword, which had been away from him for a long time, fell from the sky and stabbed into the ground. The sword hummed softly, as if it was telling its longing. Chapter 391. Knowing Destiny, Knowing Destiny. One's name, the other's life. Today, they joined forces to fight against the gods. The moment he held the sword, a bloody mist filled the sky. Red veins extended from the Knowing Destiny sword and pierced into Ning Chen's hand. The sword that was connected by blood showed its true form today. The strongest sword. The 4 origins of water, wind, thunder, and fire surged. The green blade and the red veins reflected a dazzling light. He had nurtured the sword for many years. Now, he was ready to fight. Lord Pluto, sorry for the wait. Please, Ning Chen stepped forward and said. Don't disappoint the gods this time. Lord Pluto's expression didn't change. He raised his left hand. Instantly, a powerful wave of qi surged out. The terrifying pressure made people feel incomparable fear even before it reached them. The battle started. Outside Chizhou Mountain, Luo Xingchen, Xian Tian, and the others appeared. They were there to watch the battle and also to guard against any accidents. Lord Pluto attacked. The first palm swallowed the heavens and the earth. Everywhere it passed, the earth collapsed. Giant rocks flew everywhere. The terrifying power was like the end of the world. Ning Chen focused. Purple qi surrounded his body. His blade condensed into vast essence and met the divine power head-on. With a boom, Knowing Destiny stood still like a mountain. The power of the god's palm disappeared. Oh! Lord Pluto praised. Heavenly fire rose around him. It was endless and lit up the 9 heavens. The blue divine flame burned the sky and boiled the sea. It lit up the entire world like it was daytime. Just as Lord Pluto was about to attack, Ningchen attacked at the same time. The heavenly book opened and the world was born. The 3 scrolls rang together and reincarnation evolved. The scene of the beginning of the world appeared again. The divine flame clashed with the ultimate move. Between the two, the earth rumbled and cracked. Chizhou Mountain shook violently as if it had suffered a heavenly tribulation. The scene of the end of the world was shocking. In the distance, the spectators were shocked. Although he had the fate of the great Xia, the fact that Marquis Jiming could meet the divine power head-on was still shocking. Marquis Jiming is indeed the strongest person in the world, Luo Xingchen said seriously. Even in the entire 5 regions, there were only a handful of people who could take a divine move head-on. The foundation of Marquis Jiming's martial arts was far beyond theirs. He once said that after cultivating the Life Scroll's forbidden technique, one's foundation will undergo a qualitative upgrade. But it won't last for long. The human body's capacity is limited, and any power that surpasses the limit will quickly dissipate. So no matter what the result of this battle is, they won't have a second chance, said Li Luo. Hierarch, did you see how Jiming Marquis took Yama's attack head-on? Luan Fengchen asked seriously. The power of Pluto's palm was the biggest problem they could not avoid. No matter how strong Marquis Jiming's foundation was, he could not be compared with a deity. It was incredible that the two could fight head-on. If my guess isn't wrong, this should be the Taoist sect's Taiji Yin-Yang technique. 3 parts join, 7 parts divide, heaven and earth as the artifact, life as the beginning, nothingness as the end. For scrolls of samsara, true essence endlessly multiplying and multiplying. Only then can it forcefully resist the attack of a god, replied Li Luo. The battle between the deities and the Marquis had reached its climax. With the Grand Xia's 1,000 years of fortune, Jiming Marquis Jiming's foundation had reached an unprecedented height. His 2 divine weapons were shining brightly, constantly humming as they worked together to block the attack. Since the creation of the world, the 4 scrolls of heaven, earth, nothingness, and life were gathered in one person for the first time. The heavenly book Samsara was extremely powerful, and its power dissipated into nothingness. Mu Qingxue and Xia Zi still haven't found a chance to attack. Luan Fengchen frowned as he saw the battle becoming more and more intense, but the 2 of them still hadn't moved. Li Luo also focused. It was probably true. They weren't in the battle, so they couldn't completely sense the battle situation. The weakness of the 7 ultimate divine body had been mended a lot after Yama absorbed the origins of Yazi and Shiji. Now, it would be even harder to seize an opportunity. Jiming Heaven is not guilty. Divine flames appeared again, and the sword's edge condensed the power of the 4 origins, blocking the attack of a god. Then Yan Qing's blade light pierced through the heavens and earth, and purple chi spread for 3,000 miles as it slashed down. A shocking saber strike streaked across the sky. The terrifying might even left a glaring purple saber mark in the sky. Yama's expression didn't change. He flipped his palm and raised it into the sky. As the blade light descended, the purple chi exploded, and violent waves surged endlessly. Knowing Destiny's all-out attack was infused with the fortune of Great Xia, and even a god couldn't resist it. The mountain rocks shifted, and Yama took half a step back. At this moment, Mu Qingxue, who hadn't attacked yet, finally moved. With a clang, the Chengying sword was unsheathed. The wind blew, and the sword moved. It was so fast that it was hard to blink. Do you think it's that easy? Yama snorted coldly. He raised his hand to block the Chengying sword, and his palm condensed divine energy. Mu Qingxue's figure flashed, and he quickly dodged the palm energy. He turned back in an instant, and the sword broke toward Yama's chi-si again. Yama didn't have time to recover after the attack, and his true chi shook violently. The other part of his chi-si immediately mended the weakness of his divine body, and his protective true energy surged out, blocking the Chengying sword. Not bad. true energy spread out, and the woman in front of him was pushed back. Yama raised his left hand, and a sky full of thunderbolts descended, gathered in his hand, and attacked wildly. As the thunderbolts approached, Ning Chen immediately stepped forward, waving his sword and saber to block the attack head-on. With a bang, Knowing Destiny took 3 steps back, and the blood chi around him rolled violently. Scroll of Earth, Earth Destruction, Mountain Destruction. Ning Chen stopped, and the sword in his hand pierced into the ground. The next moment, the ground below him shook, and streaks of sword chi rushed out, turning into a sword rain that flew in the opposite direction. Yama flipped his right hand, and his protective true energy rose endlessly, blocking the sword rain. Then, he condensed his palm power, and another attack was launched. The roaring and surging god's move destroyed everything in its path. In the blink of an eye, it was already in front of Knowing Destiny. Ning Chen bowed, and frost condensed on his sword. Water, fire, wind, and thunder swirled on the sword, and the blood light condensed into a phoenix. As the sword was drawn, the phoenix cried, and it crashed into the god's move. With a shocking explosion, the phoenix scattered and returned to Knowing Destiny's body. Sui took a few steps back, and the sword in her hand turned into flowing light and flew out. Resonance of heaven and earth, life and death defying destiny. It was an ultimate move. The sword and the blade turned into a void, and the clouds pressed down. The earth surged with sharp light, and the crisscrossing shadows of the sword and the blade trapped the god's body. Yama's protective true energy protected him, and his 2 sea of chi rotated, blocking the blade light. Flying sword feather. In an instant, the true energy vibrated, and thousands of sword chi gathered behind Mu Qingshuo, turning into a pair of wings. In the blink of an eye, Mu Qingshuo's figure was 30% faster than before. The Qingying sword directly pierced into the weak point of the sea of chi. Heaven rises, earth falls, no life. Seeing the weakness of the god's body, Ning Chen's body moved instantly. In the next moment, Sui disappeared, and she turned into a streak of light, arriving in front of the god in an instant. Frost condensed on his sword finger, and the wind and snow turned into a glaring sword light, rushing out. Yama's eyes turned cold, and his genuine chi spread out, shaking off the Qingying sword in front of him. Then, he turned his palm to block the sword light condensed by the wind and snow. Tisk! The sound of clothes tearing could be heard. Yama didn't have enough chi to block 70% of the attack, and the sword light was deflected, brushing past the god's shoulder. Blood flowed out, and it was the first time the god was injured since the battle started. Sword moves wind. At the same time, Mu Qingshuo's figure turned back, and the Qingying sword quickly changed direction, breaking towards the sea of chi in front of Yama's chest. Not far away, Xia Zi, who had been watching the battle, also moved. Demonic chi swirled, and the sword chi followed. The sword chi carried the power to break mountains, and rushed towards the end of the Qingying sword. One sword assisted the other, and the Qingying sword advanced another inch, breaking through Yama's protective true energy, and piercing into the god's chest. Too slow. Just as the attack was about to succeed, Yama opened his eyes, and a cold light flashed past. The 2 figures flew out together, vomiting blood. Mu Qingshuo Zi. Ning Chen's heart shook, and he didn't have time to look. His sword condensed frost, and his saber moved the wind and clouds. The 4 scrolls resonated, and between heaven and earth, water, fire, wind, and thunder roared, and a shocking power was activated. Jiming Marquis, your performance has satisfied God, but it's time to end this. As soon as he finished speaking, the divine light around the Nether King's body shot up to the 9 heavens. The dazzling brilliance was dazzling. In the next moment, it could destroy the heavens and the earth. Jiming Marquis blocked the attack, and with a bang, he was forced back several steps. Since the start of the battle, he had continuously blocked the Yama King's attack, and his body was showing signs of collapsing. Not good. In the distance, Xian Tian, Jiang Hua, and the others' expressions changed. Just as they were about to help, they were stopped by Li Luo. No, if we join the battle, the situation will immediately change. At that time, not only will we not be able to help, but we will also break their tacit understanding, said Li Luo. If this continues, Ning Chen and the others will be in danger, said Jiang Hua. The Yama King's attacks were all aimed at Ning Chen. No matter how extraordinary his foundation was, he wouldn't be able to last forever. Sect Master is right. Furthermore, when Jiming Marquis and the others came here, they were already prepared to die. The reason they had us watch the battle was so that we could observe the Yama King's weakness. There's no room for us to interfere in this battle, said Luo Xingchen. Luan Fengchen sighed deeply. His eyes were grave as he looked at the battle in the distance. On Mount Qizhou, the battle was still going on. Jiming Marquis, who had blocked the Yama King's attacks, had a trace of red on his lips. Even with his peerless foundation, he couldn't continue suppressing the backlash from the Yama King's attack. When Xia Zi saw that Ning Chen's body was about to collapse, his heart sank. He endured his injuries, and the demonic aura around him rose to its peak. He changed his attack pattern and rushed forward. He was going to fight strength with strength, and he was going to block the Nether King's attack at close range. Demons, what a pitiful race. The Yama King raised his hand to block the Yama King's attack. Then he flipped his palm, and a terrifying divine aura surged out. With a bang, Xia Zi's black robe was dyed red. Xia Zi endured the divine might head-on. His blood flowed continuously, but his sword didn't stop either. Yama sword, bury the heavens. As the sword approached the Yama King's body, the devilish chi exploded. Back off. The Yama King flipped his palm to disperse the Yama King's demonic aura. At this critical moment, Suyi's figure flashed, blocking the Yama King's attack. Wind and snow swirled, and she turned her palm to meet the Yama King's attack. With a huge explosion, the Yama King and the Yama King's palms collided. The Yama King's attack caused the ground to crack open, spreading out for hundreds of miles. Sword style, close distance. The only style, the only sword. Mu Chengshue's figure disappeared from where he stood, and when he reappeared, he was already in front of the Yama King. He used Chengying's sword, close distance, and once again pierced the Yama King's protective Jin Yuan. Chapter 392. Just as the Infernal King's true energy was about to weaken, the sword pierced through his protective true energy and reached the God Sea of Energy. They had missed the opportunity, but this time, they couldn't miss it again. The shadow-bearing sword pierced through his body and spun rapidly, causing blood to flow out. Seeing this, Xia Zi stepped out. His demonic sword swept out with a torrential demonic might, aiding his momentum. Ci. As the sword pierced through his body, blood gushed out. The Hell King's Qi Si was damaged, and his true Yuan was shaken violently. The Hell King took half a step back, enduring the pain in his chest, and forcefully counterattacked. A majestic palm energy was released, and the two were severely injured. They were sent flying and vomited a mouthful of blood after landing on the ground. At this moment, the azure sword appeared, and the four essences of water, wind, thunder, and fire surged, once again attacking the Hell King's injured Qi Si. The Hell King's Qi Si blocked the azure sword, but the injured Qi Si was too weak to block the attack. Ning Chen flipped his left palm and slapped the tip of the azure sword. With a "siite" sound, the azure sword penetrated the barrier and pierced into the god's body. Ah! With a groan, blood dripped from the Hell King's mouth. He grabbed the azure sword, and divine flames rose around him. He flipped his palm and slapped out. Ning Chen couldn't block the attack in time and was sent flying. His clothes were dyed red, and he was sent flying dozens of feet away. Ning Chen. Xia Zi and Mu Qingxue were shocked. They barely managed to stabilize their bodies and slashed out again. Their swords crisscrossed and swept towards the injured god. The Hell King raised his hand and dispersed the two swords. The true Yuan around him became even more unstable. The god's body was showing signs of defeat, and the God-Slayer battle was showing signs of victory. The three suppressed their injuries and pushed their true Yuan to the limit. The next attack would end the Hell King's undefeated legend. Ning Chen's eyes narrowed. He turned his hands, and the sword left his hands. They circled around his body. Wind and thunder surged, and water and fire surged. Endless majestic power was born and died. With the support of the purple chi, the god-slaying technique shook the heavens and earth. Four scrolls together, no life in heaven and earth. The strongest move gathered the power of the four scrolls and Great Xia's 1,000 years of luck. Heavenly might surged and spun rapidly in the air. In the next moment, the blade and sword carried the power to split open the heavens, turning into a dazzling streak of light that shot out. At the same time, Mu Qingxue took a step forward, leaping into the air. Her sword condensed to the extreme, and the sword wings behind her scattered, turning into streaks of sharp light, gathering on the shadow-bearing sword. In the blink of an eye, she fell from the sky. Autumn water flows through the two instruments, the sea of clouds reveals the heavenly light. At the same time, the ruler unleashed the demonic aura around him. Endless demonic aura soared into the sky and into the 9 heavens. The ultimate move of the Confucian sect appeared once again. The devil's sword trembled, and its sword light shone brightly, reflecting its demonic might. The three people's most powerful moves intertwined and converged. In the end, they turned into a dazzling sword light that slashed apart heaven and earth and descended upon the divine body. Facing an unprecedented threat, the Nether King's expression turned serious as well. Amidst the raging wind, the godly flame roared out. Its destructive might cracked the void and suppressed everything in the world. The two extremes collided, and the violent shockwaves destroyed everything in their surroundings. The bodies of the three could not withstand the impact, and the corners of their mouths were dyed red. Shadow of the remnant wind. Amidst the shockwaves, Mu Qingxue took a step in the air and turned back. With extreme speed, she condensed the last of her strength into her sword and penetrated the divine body once again. A pool of blood dyed the body of the Chengying sword red. The sword had penetrated an inch, but it could not advance any further. Seeing this, Ning Chen and Xia Zi endured the heavy injuries on their bodies and quickly rushed forward. Their swords and sabers flowed together to support the Chengying sword. The sword penetrated inch by inch, indicating the success of the battle of blasphemy. Just as dawn was about to appear, the 12 wings of sin spread out behind the Nether King. In an instant, divine might erupted, blocking the sword in front of the sea of qi. The fluttering black feathers were formed by the godly origin energy, and they disappeared in the blink of an eye. The 12 wings of sin also disappeared. The deity raised his hand, and an extreme divine might roared out. The three people were sent flying, and their blood fell like rain. The divine might was irreversible, and in the end, they failed on the verge of success. Blood dyed the ground red. The three people landed on the ground. Blood flowed down the sword and dyed the ground red. In the end, the humans were defeated in this calamity. You tried your best, but unfortunately, the result is already decided. The Nether King waved his hand, scattering the dust in the air. Looking at the three people in front of him, a look of approval flashed across his face. In tens of thousands of years, this was the first time someone had injured him to this extent. This trip to the human world was not in vain. The bleak night wind blew the fallen leaves. The three heavily injured figures were covered in blood, especially Mu Qingxue, whose foundation was slightly weaker. His consciousness was on the verge of fainting. "Zi, take Mu Qingxue away." Ning Chen struggled to support his body, and looked back at the emperor. "You?" Xia Zi seemed to have thought of something, and his expression changed. "Today, no one will be able to leave." The Nether King raised his hand, and the 9 heavens lightning struck down. With a rumbling sound, the ground under him was hit by another calamity. Rocks flew everywhere, and the lightning turned them into ashes and disappeared. On the deity's right hand, the 9 heavens divine lightning screeched like 1,000 birds. It was extremely ear-piercing. The destructive divine move opened the road to the underworld. In the end, with a light sigh, Ning Chen no longer hesitated. He stomped his foot, and the scroll of life opened up. Extreme cold air spread out, and the heaven and earth trembled. The wind and snow surged, and the entire Chizhou mountain range turned into a world of ice and snow in the blink of an eye. Rising into the sky, knowing Destiny's white clothes fluttered in the wind, and his body was surrounded by wind and snow. He looked like a deity who had descended to the mortal world. The aura around him changed from life to death. The aura of the three scrolls of heaven, earth, and supreme all merged into the forbidden move of the scroll of life. Destruction of life. 100 years of foundation scattered in a day, and 1,000 years of fate disappeared in a night. The move that gathered the strongest foundation and fate surpassed the heaven and earth, and broke through the limits of human beings. The wind and snow were dyed red, and it became the most powerful move that could kill gods and Buddhas. The Nether King looked at the white figure floating in the blood mist, and a trace of surprise flashed through his eyes. Humans had surprised the deities once again. The power of the forbidden move could destroy the heaven and earth. The space around knowing destiny kept collapsing, forming a huge hole. Only the wind and snow, stained with blood, rose endlessly, and its power was terrifying. Seeing that the power of the forbidden move had surpassed the limit, the Nether King raised his left hand again. The divine flame surged, and the blue heavenly fire reflected the falling thunderbolts in the sky. Suddenly, the thunder was loud, and the fire burned the sky. The divine power shook the entire divine land. The last ultimate move collided. The forbidden move of the scroll of life surpassed the heaven and earth, and even the deities couldn't completely block it. They were forced back a few steps, and the entire Chizhou mountain range collapsed. A huge crack appeared on the mountain range, and the heaven's gate was destroyed. It completely sank into the ground and became history. In the aftermath of the collision, knowing destiny flew out. His body was dyed red, and his blood spilled over 100 feet. Ning Chen. Xia Zi shuddered and quickly flew over to catch the falling figure. She said with a worried expression, "Hurry, go." Knowing destiny spat out a mouthful of blood, he couldn't hold on any longer and fainted. "I said that no one can leave today." As soon as he finished speaking, the Nether King appeared in the raging sandstorm. His palm energy roared and attacked the three. In that moment of crisis, an azure arrow containing unparalleled power shot over. Everyone's true yuan was concentrated in the arrow, and it crashed into the deity's palm energy. The aftershock dispersed in all directions, shattering the mountain. The palm energy disappeared, and the arrow light also collapsed. "Take Ning Chen and Mu Qingxue away. We'll cover the rear." Li Luo, Luan Fengchen, and the others appeared and said. Xia Zi didn't say anything. He took the other two and turned into a streak of light, quickly retreating. "You think you can leave?" The Nether King snorted coldly. Divine flames surged out of his body, and he slapped out with his palm. Rivers and mountains drink hatred, blood maple October red. Moon shadow. Vast armies might. Luan Fengchen, Jianghua, and Marquis victorious returns expressions became serious. They attacked at the same time, and three blades slashed down at the destructive flames. At the same time, Luo Xingchen drew his star mark bow. Li Luo and Xian Tian both poured their true yuan into the scarlet arrow. The two attacks intertwined. After attacking, no one dared to delay and quickly retreated. With a shocking explosion, rocks flew everywhere. The divine flames collided with the blades and arrows. True yuan shook endlessly, and the ravaged earth once again suffered a great calamity. The shockwaves from the shocking battle lingered for a long time. In the raging sandstorm, the Nether King calmly stood. In the end, the deity still won. Suddenly, blood spurted out from the Nether King's qi, and the vermilion liquid in his mouth dripped down. Ugh! The Nether King snorted and retreated half a step. His aura became violently unstable. What a good knowing destiny, Marquis. What a good forbidden technique. This time's trip to the human world is getting more and more interesting. The Nether King waved his hand to seal the wound on his chest. He looked in the direction that everyone had left and took out the Taotia's origin. In the next moment, the deity's body scattered and disappeared. With one of his two chi seas broken, the deity had returned to temporarily heal his injuries. Because of Ning Chen and the other two's efforts, the destruction of the human world had to be temporarily stopped. The deity's departure caused the world to tremble. In the battle between deities, the human world had lost. However, it also allowed the human world to see hope. With his two chi seas broken, the Nether King's body was no longer perfect. The battle between the three of them provided the best reference for the human world's experts to face the deity again. Grand Xia, knowing destiny Marquis manner. Xia Zi brought the unconscious Ning Chen and Mu Qingxue back. As soon as he landed, he vomited a mouthful of blood. Luofei, who had been forced to stay behind by Li Luo, was startled. She quickly went forward to support him. Save them. Xia Zi's figure fell down. He had also fainted. At this moment, Li Luo and the others also returned. Sensing the three's weak auras, they didn't say anything and immediately went to heal them. The Grand Xia is no longer a safe place. Before the Nether King comes again, we must leave as soon as possible, said Luo Xingchen. Where in the world is a safe place? Asked Luofei. To the four extremities. At this moment, Worryless walked out and spoke. Everyone frowned. They didn't understand why. Although the four extremities were far away, this distance didn't have any effect on a deity. Luan Fengchen suddenly thought of something and looked at Worryless with disbelief. You mean to say that we should seal the passage between the two realms? Yes. Worryless nodded, his expression grave. Borrowing the karmic luck of the Holy Lands, with my current strength, I might be able to seal the passage between the two realms for a while. Although I can't truly block the Nether King, I should be able to buy everyone some time to breathe. Chapter 393. Within the Grand Xia Imperial City, Li Luo, Xian Tian, and Luofei were separately treating three severely wounded people. Surging true qi constantly flowed into their bodies. After a great battle, the three of them had nearly exhausted all of their true essence and blood energy. Ugh! In front of Li Luo, Ning Chen unconsciously let out a muffled groan. His cultivation technique rapidly dissipated. He had forcefully used a forbidden technique, so he had to bear the consequences. Not good. Luan Fengchen and Jiang Hua quickly went up and poured their true qi into Ning Chen's body. The three of them worked together to stabilize Knowing Destiny's injured body. A quarter of an hour later, Ning Chen opened his eyes. Enduring the pain, he held his fingers together and condensed his qi. Before his qi dissipated, he injected the last of his energy into Xia Zi's body. In the next moment, a phoenix cry rang out. The red light left his body and reformed with his remaining life force. The Earth's soul left his body and merged with the phoenix body. His main body's aura dissipated and he fell into a deep slumber. According to Forgotten Sorrow, prepare to seal the passage between the two realms, said Ning Chen. Your body also won't be able to last much longer, said Li Luo gravely. It's fine. This isn't the time to worry about this. Let's leave first, said Ning Chen. What do we do about this place? Asked Luofei worriedly. The Nether King is naturally arrogant and won't attack ordinary mortals. Furthermore, he was heavily injured in this battle. His next target will definitely be the Phoenix Origin. If we stay here, we'll just bring disaster to everyone. Ning Chen narrowed his eyes. In today's battle, the Nether King's dual chi seas had been destroyed. He needed the Phoenix Origin even more to repair the flaws in his 7 ultimate divine body's true chi fluctuations. Once the Nether King repaired the flaws in his divine body, he would definitely pull back the other 4 realms. At that time, the power of a god would completely descend, and no one would be able to stop him from destroying the human world. They didn't have many chances. Before the Nether King pulled back the other 4 realms, they had to send him back to the 7 ultimate celestial realm. It's a bit inappropriate. Back then, in order to tie down Yao Man and the others, we left Rong Lu behind. Although our greatest enemy is the Nether King and we have to put aside our grudges, Rong Lu has been eyeing the Phoenix Origin for a long time. We have to be on guard. Speaking to hear, Luan Fengchen glanced at Luo Xingchen and couldn't help but sigh. The world was truly unpredictable. Who would have thought that the enemy he had been so wary of would now become an ally? Ningchen pondered for a moment and said, Mu Qingxue and Zi are too heavily injured and need to find a safe place to recuperate. Going to the Four Extremities is the best choice. I will deal with the matter of the Rong Tower carefully. The overall situation is more important and cannot be delayed. In that case, let's move out immediately, said Jiang Hua. Marquis, you must be careful. Ruoshi stepped forward with tears in her eyes. Yes. Ning Chen nodded. He glanced at everyone and said, let's go. In the next moment, streaks of flowing light shot out of the Marquis estate and rushed towards the Ascension Valley. The group of people who carried the last hope of the human world had taken away most of the combat power of the divine land. Before the final battle with the Netherworld King, the strength of the human world could no longer be damaged. When they were passing through the sky above Desolate City, Ningchen suddenly stopped and looked at the white-robed man below. He said solemnly, Senior Mubai, we are preparing to temporarily seal the passage between the Four Extremities and the divine land. I wonder if Senior can come with us. You all go ahead. I still have things to do, so I won't be going. Mubai calmly said in front of the sword pool. The feeling he gave off was completely different from the last time he acted. He was absolutely restrained, like the most ordinary mortal. No one could sense any sword intent from him. Luo Xingchen narrowed his eyes. This feeling was familiar. Although it wasn't obvious, it was very close. Ningchen also saw the difference and sighed in his heart. He didn't try to persuade him anymore and continued to fly away. The crowd quickly followed behind him, and before long, they disappeared from sight. Ascension Valley. One figure after another flew into the spatial passage. When they reappeared, they were already at the peak of the Four Extremities. When everyone appeared and saw the situation in front of them, they were shocked. The spatial turbulence that had blocked the passage between the two realms in the past had completely disappeared. The void in front of them was completely erased, making them feel endless coldness. Without a doubt, there was only one person in the world who could do this, the Netherworld King. Don't look anymore. Let's go. Ningchen said, and with a stomp of his foot, he quickly flew into the distance. Everyone nodded and rushed forward together. Four Extremities Holy Land. The instant they appeared, Ronglu sensed them and opened his eyes. His figure flickered, and he appeared in front of everyone. Oh? When enemies met, their eyes would turn red. The tense atmosphere made everyone turn solemn. Luan Fengchen, you better give me an explanation, said Ronglu gloomily. Senior Ronglu, the Netherworld King's calamity is imminent. Let's put aside our personal grudges for now, said Luan Fengchen. Where's that bald monk Jian Bodhi? Why isn't he here? Does he not dare to come? Snorted Ronglu. Senior Jian Bodhi has already died in battle to stop the Netherworld King, said Ningchen calmly. Ronglu was startled. His thoughts suddenly became complicated. After fighting for 100 years, hearing the news of his opponent's death was like this. There was a trace of carefreeness, but there was even more regret and emptiness. From now on, there would be no one who wouldn't let him go. I don't care about your matters. Don't disturb me. Ronglu turned around and returned to his palace. The instant he turned around, he sighed inwardly. His complicated feelings were indescribable. Brother Jiang, bring Miss Luo to heal those two. Luan Fengchen instructed. Then he looked at the people around him and said, everyone, rest first. Ning Chen, worryless, come with me. Everyone split up. Luo Fei and Hua Hua brought the unconscious Mu Qingxue and Xia Zi away. As for the remaining people, other than Ning Chen and worryless, they stayed behind to rest. In the depths of the Four Extreme Holy Land, at the bottom of a rugged valley, Luan Fengchen, Ning Chen, and Wang Yu walked over. Not long after, strands of dazzling five-colored aura appeared, giving off a strange pressure that made it harder for people to approach. After another 100 steps, a huge stone bell appeared. 5 colored lights circulated around it. It was extremely extraordinary. The stone bell had already become one with the Holy Land's terrain. It was a treasure that suppressed karmic luck. It was difficult to move. Ning Chen frowned as he looked at the karmic luck around the stone bell. This wasn't right. The Holy Land had existed for over 10,000 years. The karmic luck it had accumulated should be far greater than this. Do you still remember that white mist insect tide? Luan Fengchen could see what Ning Chen was thinking and sighed. Ning Chen was startled. Then he seemed to think of something and his expression changed. Could it be, you guessed right. Those things were fed by the Holy Land's karmic luck. I only learned of this recently. If the power of karmic luck isn't used properly, it's truly terrifying, sighed Luan Fengchen. A cold light flashed through Ning Chen's eyes. It was no wonder he had tried so many methods, but the white mist insect tide had never died. Instead, it had been destroyed by the berserk karmic luck of the barbarian dynasty. Those things really were monsters fed by karmic luck. With a wave of his hand, Nian Qing flew out and landed on the stone bell. A moment later, the surroundings changed. Endless 5-colored karmic luck flowed out from the stone bell and poured into the saber. Forget the sorrow, said Ning Chen. She nodded and stepped forward. She raised her delicate hand and the spiritual chi of heaven and earth swirled. The 5-colored karmic luck turned into a huge vortex and sped up the fusion. An hour later, the karmic luck in the stone bell had almost dried up. On the stone bell, Nian Qing's 5-colored brilliance flowed, dazzling people's minds. Let's go. Ning Chen waved his hand and put away Nian Qing. He turned around and went back the way he had come. Luan Fengchen and Forget the Sorrow followed him and left together. The three of them left the Holy Land. Without stopping, they rushed to the west where the two territories connected. At the same time, in the homeland of Western Buddha, in a huge ancient palace, one terrifying aura after another descended. Each of them was at the peak of the Xiantian realm. Their terrifying pressure caused the space in the palace to distort. The Demon Buddha of the Demon Temple, Zi Tiangong of the Divine Palace, the Light Elder of Tianfu Mountain, and two powerful existences from the Forbidden Lands gathered in the ancient palace to discuss the matter of Pluto. Light Elder, why did you open the passage between the two territories without permission? Asked Zi Tiangong coldly, looking at the illusory youth beside him. Amit Ba. Does the Master of the Divine Palace also have times when he is afraid? Said the Light Elder with a faint smile. Bald donkey, don't forget how the 5 territories were destroyed 30,000 years ago. You should know the consequences of Pluto descending on the homeland of Western Buddha, said the Demon Buddha coldly. I know. That's why I tried my best to stop him. You and I should both know that the space barrier between the two territories can't stop Pluto. If the divine prefecture of the eastern region is defeated, the homeland of Western Buddha will undoubtedly be the next to suffer, said the Light Elder calmly. The smile on his face disappeared. It's already happened. It's useless to argue. If you have the time, let's discuss how to deal with the threat of Pluto this time, said one of the illusory figures from the Forbidden Lands coldly. Pluto has descended this time and still hasn't made a move to pull back the 4 territories. Most likely, something unexpected has happened. We are limited by the imperfection of heaven and earth, so we can't break through. When Pluto comes to the human world, he may also be limited by this. If that's the case, perhaps there is a possibility of stopping him, said the woman who hadn't spoken. What do you mean? Asked Zi Tiangong with a frown. Select the cultivators from the homeland of Western Buddha and send them to the divine prefecture of the eastern region. If possible, try to send a cultivator who is close to the realm of consummation, said the woman seriously. At their level, it was impossible to cross due to the space barrier. However, it was possible to send a cultivator who was close to the realm of consummation. It's too difficult. Zi Tiangong didn't immediately reject it, but he didn't agree either. The stronger the cultivation, the greater the repulsive force when crossing the space barrier between the two territories. It wasn't easy to send a cultivator who was close to the realm of consummation. In addition, there was another reason that wasn't easy to solve. The people sent to the divine prefecture of the eastern region this time were sent to their deaths rather than to deal with the Netherworld king. The choice of these people, especially this master who was close to the fulfillment realm, was not something that could be reached with just a few words. How to find him and which side to send him was not something that could be agreed upon. Chapter 394. In the ancient hall, the five-party talks were at a stalemate. Everyone knew how precious an expert close to perfection was. Once they were sent to the eastern divine lands, the possibility of them coming back alive was minuscule. I will choose this person. Just as the stalemate was about to be broken, the woman who made the suggestion spoke again. After she finished speaking, she changed the topic and said, however, it's absolutely impossible for an expert who's close to the perfection stage to stop the Nether King. Shouldn't you show some sincerity? Oh? Who is the woman's choice? Purple Sky Palace's eyes flashed with surprise as he asked. You will know soon, the woman said coolly. Since the woman has made such a sacrifice, Tianfu Mountain cannot be stingy. We are willing to use the sin-cleansing spirit rhinoceros to help the woman, the Light Venerable said. Buddha Bone's sacred weapon, the Light Venerable is so generous, the demon Buddha said with a fake smile. Tianfu Mountain is not like the demon temple. I think the demon Buddha's sincerity will surprise us, the Light Venerable said with a smile. Humph, bald donkey, you don't have to provoke me. I will not refuse the responsibility that the demon temple should bear, the demon Buddha said coldly. The divine palace will also fully support this operation. The sincerity shown will not disappoint the woman, Purple Sky Palace also said. That is good. 2 days later, in the ancient land of Chongling, the woman will wait for your arrival. With that, the woman's figure slowly faded and disappeared in a flash. Amitabha, I will also take my leave. The Light Venerable's figure dissipated and left the ancient hall. We will meet again. The other illusory figure in the Forbidden Land also disappeared, retreating in a low-key manner. After the three left, Purple Sky Palace's expression turned serious. Demon Buddha, do you know when the woman has an expert close to Khanate perfection under her command? The Demon Buddha shook his head and said in a low voice, this is the first time I've heard of it. This woman has always been mysterious and difficult to see through. In the deepest part of the ancient land of Chongling, a beautiful woman stood silently. Her delicate hand flipped through strange seals. Threads of light seeped out of her body and then condensed into a body. The face was 30% similar but 70% different. It was less cold and more peaceful. The one-body double transformation technique had reappeared in the mortal world, but it was even more complete than the incomplete version in the hands of Ning Chen and the Eternal Night Hierarch. Its aura was close to that of the Great Circle of the Three Disasters. It was hard to believe that this was only a clone. Female Chang, don't you think your actions are too risky? An aged voice rang out from the ancient land. I've already made up my mind. There's no need to say anything more, the female Chang replied indifferently. Within the ancient land, the aged voice sighed softly. It knew that any further persuasion would be useless, so it fell silent and no longer spoke. In Tianfu Mountain, the bright moon shone high in the sky. Traces of blood were overflowing. The influence of the divine land had begun to manifest in the homeland of West Buddha. The place closest to the sky was already vaguely visible. This calamity of the mortal world would not end with the divine land, but as the beginning. It would completely turn the 5 regions into hell. The steps of the gods destroying the world would eventually reach the 4 regions. The success or failure of the divine land was not just the success or failure of one region, but the survival of the entire mortal world. The Light Venerable stood at the peak of Tianfu Mountain. He glanced at the 2 people leaving below the mountain and sighed softly. In the end, he had concealed today's decision. At the same time, in the 4 extremes, at the peak of the 9 heavens, the important task of sealing the passage between the 2 realms had reached a critical moment. Ning Chen's luck turned into sentiments. Dazzling 5-colored energies surged out. Vast fortunes were like endless waves. At the side, Wang Yu channeled the origin power of the Tao body at the same time. As the wind and clouds changed, a giant whirlpool appeared and continuously absorbed the spiritual energy of the universe within 1,000 miles. In the next moment, the spiritual energy of the universe and the fortunes of the Holy Lands merged and poured into the spatial passage. At this moment, the world between the two realms rumbled and shook violently. It startled the gods who were still recovering their vital energy. Oh! In the dark abyss, Lord Pluto opened his eyes and exclaimed softly. In the blink of an eye, his divine body dissipated and disappeared. At the same time, in the barren city, beams of sword light shot into the sky. Endless sword will shook the 9 heavens and the divine land. The legend of the sword reappeared in the mortal world. All the swords within 3,000 miles did not listen to their master's commands. They unsheathed themselves and flew into the 9 heavens. Thousands of swords gathered in the sky, forming a sword cloud that covered the sky. Thunder rumbled and rumbled. The strongest sword in the history of the divine land stepped out. His white robe fluttered under the night sky. Black energy gathered and the body of Lord Pluto appeared. Feeling the omnipresent sword will, a strange look flashed in his eyes. In the sword pool, the chaos sword essence flew out. The moment it entered his hand, the blade changed. In the dazzling brilliance, the blade finally opened. The sharpest sword surpassed all the weapons in the mortal world. Before the sword moved, cracks appeared in the space. "Swordsman, is this your challenge?" Lord Pluto asked. "Please," Mubai said calmly. "I accept. Don't disappoint Lord Pluto." After saying that, Lord Pluto raised his hand. Violent winds and raging mists appeared. Shocking divine power rose endlessly. Even the heavens and earth shook and collapsed. Sword style. Before the divine move was used, the sword in Mubai's hand moved. The chaos sword slashed out a dazzling light. One sword, 10,000 calamities. The sharp sword light slashed apart the heavens and earth. It descended upon Lord Pluto's body and crashed into the raging mists. The sword light shattered, and the divine move was used. The indescribable power shook people's hearts. Sword style, limitless sword. After the divine move was used, Mubai's body moved. The limitless sword appeared. It was the fastest sword in the world. Wherever the will was, the sword would follow. It broke through the limits of space and drew a white shadow under the night sky. It was so fast that it surpassed the limit. Lord Pluto raised his hand and used his true yuan to block the sword. After a moment of deadlock, his true yuan shook violently and became extremely unstable. Sword style, formless sword. Mubai's primal chaos sword core disappeared. Thousands of sword images condensed into one. They condensed, then condensed again and again. The sword slashed out, gathering the world's sharpness. It instantly broke through Lord Pluto's true yuan. When the sword entered Lord Pluto's body, blood gushed out. After an inch, it couldn't move an inch further. Not bad. Lord Pluto grabbed the sword with his right hand. Thousands of sword intents appeared in front of Mubai to protect him. However, Lord Pluto's divine power was unstoppable. The sword intents continuously collapsed. Mubai's clothes were blown away. In the distance, Jian Yi and Jian Er's eyes were heavy. However, they didn't go up to help. They knew that this battle wasn't something they could interfere in. Moreover, their master wouldn't allow them to interfere. In the sky above Desolation City, the battle was still ongoing. Sword intents intersected between Lord Pluto and Lord Pluto. Each move was stronger and faster than the previous one. The heaven-proving sword had 9 heaven-proving sword forms. When one form was used, another one would follow. Even Lord Pluto didn't dare to be careless when facing Lord Pluto. With a flip of his palm, Lord Pluto once again used his ultimate move. The flame of burning heaven appeared with the power to destroy the world. Everywhere it passed, the space collapsed. The ultimate divine power was beyond what the mortal world could bear. The divine prefecture trembled, and the world wailed. Sword style. Mubai's sword moved. Sword intense surged out of his body. They connected the heaven and earth, shaking the universe. 10,000 swords, greet the ancestor. Lord Pluto had already used the 6 heaven-proving sword forms. What was about to come were the final 3 forms that surpassed the limits of a human's strength. Even before Lord Pluto's move was unleashed, the space within 1,000 li trembled violently. Above the 9 heavens, 10,000 swords rapidly revolved, forming a huge sword vortex. The heavy aura made people feel as if the end of the world had arrived. In the next moment, sword lights descended from the sky. They avoided the divine flames and reached Lord Pluto's body. With a muffled groan, the divine flames broke through the sword intense and landed on Mubai's body. Blood spurted out, dyeing his white clothes red. At the same time, 10,000 swords descended from the sky and crashed into Lord Pluto's protective True Yuan. Sword lights and divine power collided. The sword lights couldn't withstand the divine power and crumbled unceasingly. Right at this moment, Lord Pluto's True Yuan suddenly trembled violently, showing signs of instability. Lord Pluto frowned slightly. His body moved, retreating for the first time since the start of the battle. Lord Pluto's illusory body was like a flowing shadow. It was difficult to see with one's eyes. However, the sword streams formed by 10,000 swords followed him like a shadow. One sword pierced through Lord Pluto's protective True Yuan, bringing forth a waterfall of blood. Lord Pluto's left arm was bleeding, dyeing his divine clothes red. "Is this your sword?" Lord Pluto waved his hand and scattered the remaining sword lights. Soon after, he stroked his left arm and the wound healed. "If this is all you have, then I'm letting Lord Pluto down by waiting for so long." As soon as he finished speaking, Lord Pluto circulated his True Yuan. In an instant, divine power descended from the heavens and thunderclouds rolled. Streaks of lightning descended from the 9 heavens and gathered on Lord Pluto's palms. The crackling thunder illuminated the entire horizon. God's move destroyed everything within 1,000 li. Desolation City, peerless city of Grand Xia, collapsed. Under the divine power, it suffered the most terrifying calamity. Sword style. The divine tribulation descended. Mubai's eyes were unprecedentedly calm. He took one last look at the divine prefecture below him. In the blink of an eye, his sword intent spread out endlessly. Everything within 1,000 li was transformed into a world of swords. One sword to prove the heavens. Lord Pluto's white clothes dissipated. The 8th sword style that had never appeared in the world was also Lord Pluto's final sword style. 1 represented the origin of numbers, 9 represented the extremity of numbers. Heaven and earth had an end, the extremity of numbers. Lord Pluto's final sword style was the strongest sword style. 1 sword to prove the heavens. The man and the sword were one. A dazzling ray of light streaked across the sky. It was so resplendent that the 9 heavens and 10 earths lost their splendor. The strongest sword style made all the swordsmen in the world feel the sword intent that surpassed everything. They all looked at the horizon in shock. Above the 4 extremities, Ning Chen, who was about to completely seal the passage between the 2 realms, felt the familiar yet strange sword intent. His expression dimmed. Junior Ning Chen respectfully sends off Senior Mubai. Knowing destiny bowed, sending off the legend of the sword. From now on, in the divine prefecture, the sword had an end. Above the divine prefecture, the sword light and the divine technique collided. Rumbling sounds could be heard. The divine lightning dissipated and the primal chaos collapsed. The final sword style disappeared. Ugh! The world of swords collapsed, but Lord Pluto let out a muffled groan. Blood gushed out of his chest. He took half a step back and stopped himself. Specks of starlight gathered in front of Lord Pluto. An illusory figure condensed into Lord Pluto's final appearance. The sword in his hand pierced Lord Pluto's chest, but it missed by a hair's breadth. Swordsman who has entered the Tao, leave your name, said Lord Pluto. Mu Bai. Chapter 395. The final sword caused Mu Bai's primordial spirit to disperse. Tens of thousands of swords wailed in the divine land as they bid farewell to the legend of the sword. The sword in front of the Nether King's chest turned into stars and disappeared. In an instant, the wind and clouds changed. Within 1,000 miles, the wind and leaves turned into swords. All things in the world turned into swords. Beams of sword light rose endlessly. At the end of the legend, the primordial spirit dissipated. The ultimate 9 swords finally appeared. The spiraling swords came and went without a trace. They came and went without a trace. One after another, they spun rapidly in the sky, forming a huge sword cloud storm. Oh! The Nether King looked at the spinning sword cloud, and a strange look flashed across his eyes. He raised his right hand, and his divine power swept out. The moment it met the storm, it disappeared. When a swordsman entered the path, at the final moment, he surpassed the limits of humans. His primordial spirit merged with the world, turning into the ultimate 9 swords that trapped the gods. Is this your final obsession? The Nether King put down his right hand and stood in the sword cloud. He did not attack again. No one knew if it was because he could not break through, or if the gods were moved by the persistence of humans and decided to give them one last chance. The gods were trapped. At the top of the 9 heavens, Ning Chen and Werelus worked together and finally succeeded in sealing the passage between the 2 realms. The longing saber entered and suppressed the providence of the divine land. The Nether King's power is too strong. The seal won't last long. Before that, we have to find a way to destroy the 7 ultimate divine body, reminded Werelus. Let's return to the divine land first. We'll discuss it again, said Chaotic Wind Dust. Okay. Ning Chen put away his thoughts and nodded. The 3 left and returned to the divine land. They did not have much time left. The next time they faced the Nether King might be their last battle. In the divine land, above the vanished desolate city, the sword cloud storm trapped the Nether King. After a day and a night, the storm gradually weakened and reached its end. At that moment, with a boom, space trembled violently. As the heavens and earth shook, cracks appeared in the void. The next moment, space collapsed as figures flew out. 9 3-calamity eminences and dozens of 5th tribulation eminences. Their powerful auras shook the entire divine continent. Just as space was about to be sealed, a woman slowly walked out and stood in the void. Her beautiful face was as calm as water. In the ancient land of Chongling, women finally appeared in the divine land. Have the strong warriors of the divine great land withered to this extent? Behind New Chong, one of the 9 3 disasters scanned the ground with his divine sense but couldn't find a single true expert. He couldn't help but sigh. Why can't I sense the Nether King's aura? Asked a 3 disaster expert from the Demon Temple. Over there. New Chong looked to the east and said. Within the sword clouds, Underworld King also sensed the foreign experts that descended. With a wave of his hand, he scattered the strands of sword energy that continuously swirled about his body, walking out step by step. Oh! The Grand Underworld King is actually trapped by this kind of sword formation. His reputation as the Underworld King is nothing more than an illusion, mocked one of the 3 disaster experts. The situation is unclear. It's still too early to jump to conclusions, New Chong said calmly. The expert from the Demon Temple sneered. Although he didn't say anything, he didn't care about the woman's words. He had never heard of Changyu, a half-step complete earthly sovereign, as New Chang's subordinate. However, with Changyu as the leader, he couldn't openly question her. The Nether King seems to be injured, said the 3 disasters of Tianfu Mountain after sensing the abnormality in the Nether King's aura. As expected. Yu Tianhong, the first swordsman from the Feihong Palace of the Divine Palace, narrowed his eyes and said coldly, "It seems that the Nether King's arrival in the human world is just a so-so." New Chong frowned slightly, feeling a little uneasy. She didn't know why the Nether King was injured, but she knew very well that if they really underestimated the Lord of the Seven Extinction Celestial Realm, who had destroyed the 5 regions, they would definitely die faster than anyone else. Let's leave first. When we find the 3 disasters of the Divine Prefecture of the Eastern region, we'll discuss how to deal with the Nether King together, Nu Chang said calmly. Compared to them, the cultivators of the Divine Prefecture of the Eastern region must have fought with the Lord of the Abyss and knew many things that they did not know. Before they truly understood the situation of the Lord of the Abyss, the best choice was to avoid him for the time being. I'm afraid there are no more 3 disasters in the Eastern region. Moreover, the Nether King is injured. This is obviously the best time to strike. How can we miss it? Yu Tianhong said with a serious expression. Brother Tianhong is right. Now is the time when the Nether King is at his weakest. Once we miss it, we won't have such an opportunity again, said the 3 disasters of the Demon Temple. Are you going to disobey the orders of the 5 Supremes? Nu Chang's eyes narrowed as she asked. We wouldn't dare. However, the best opportunity to defeat the Nether King is right in front of us. We can't turn a blind eye to it, said Yu Tianhong coldly. Have you finished the discussion? Just as the group was in a stalemate, a black aura gathered in the sky. The Nether King appeared and spoke calmly. Nu Chang's eyes turned cold. It was too late to leave now. Set up the array, said Yu Tianhong coldly. With that said, the heavenly sword was unsheathed. A sword beam shot into the clouds. Soaring Goose Hall's #1 swordsman held his sword as his aura rose endlessly, reaching the 3rd disaster realm. At the same time, the other 3 disasters of the Divine Palace walked out. 2 swords appeared, echoing the heavenly sword's sharpness. The 12 Fifth Tribulation Eminences worked together as their swords moved, dazzling the world. The Divine Palace's Big Dipper sword array appeared once again. Sword beams intersected in the world, trying to trap the gods. The Nether King remained as immovable as a mountain. His protective quintessential essence condensed and blocked wave after wave of attacks. The battle fell into a stalemate. When the 3 disasters of the Demon Temple saw this, they gave the order and led their troops to help. The sharp edges threatened to take one's life. Your swords have disappointed God. The Nether King waved his hand and repelled the incoming attacks. Following that, he flipped his palm, and extremely destructive divine flames shot out. When the divine flames appeared, everyone's expressions changed. A nearby Divine Palace expert from the 3 disasters of the Divine Palace couldn't dodge in time. He brandished his sword to block the divine might, but with a loud bang, his sword shattered and he died. The Divine Palace's Big Dipper sword array was famous in West Earth. However, after seeing the sword on the sword, the Nether King had clearly lost interest in the sword array in front of him. He no longer held back when he attacked. Blood-stained figures fell from the sky. The Nether King's coldest side appeared once again. The divine move howled and surged forward. Anyone who touched it would be injured and die. The Nether King raised his hand and said coldly, "You're next. Retreat." Seeing that nearly half of the sword array had been destroyed in the blink of an eye, Yu Tianhong suppressed the shock in his heart and shouted anxiously. Too late. The Nether King's figure flashed. As black aura surged, he instantly arrived in front of the #1 swordsman in the Divine Palace. He struck out with God's palm, taking his life. Seeing that his life was imminent, Yu Tianhong circulated all his energy and circulated the heavenly sword in his hand to block the divine might. At that moment, a golden sword appeared. Together with the heavenly sword's edge, it blocked the divine might. With a bang, the 2 of them retreated a few steps. The corners of their mouths were dyed red, and blood gushed out of their arms. Oh! A weapon that can cleanse sins and sever karma. The Nether King looked at the sword in the woman's hand as a strange glint flashed in his eyes. The Nether King's eyesight is admirable, said the woman as she wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth. Your weapon isn't bad. Unfortunately, you will still lose. With that said, the Nether King raised his hand of God again. Endless waves roared out. The 10,000-foot-tall waves shook the world. Let's go. The woman didn't want to continue fighting. She quickly retreated with the heavily injured Yu Tianhong. The remaining 7 disasters and less than half of the 5th tribulation eminences didn't dare hesitate. They immediately retreated from the battle. However, how could those who had blasphemed God's face leave so easily? God's attack descended, destroying everything in its path with an unstoppable force. The 2-3 disasters and many 5th tribulation eminences were unable to retreat in time. They flew out with a bang as blood splattered across the sky. When the woman saw this scene, her expression didn't waver at all. She quickly retreated without any intention of stopping. The remaining experts' hearts were abnormally heavy, but they knew that they would only be sending themselves to their deaths if they stayed. They sped up and left together. The Nether King stood there and watched the group of people leave. His cold expression didn't change at all. With a wave of his hand, the heavily injured figures floating in the air shattered and scattered, turning into a rain of blood that rained down. The next moment, black gas surged, and the Nether King's body disappeared. A group of people appeared in Great Xia's northern borders. After landing, they vomited blood. They were still shocked and couldn't calm down. No one expected the Nether King to be so powerful. A cold light flashed in the woman's eyes. With a wave of her hand, she threw the heavily injured Yu Tianhong to the side. If it weren't for the fact that she needed people, she really wouldn't want to save these trash. People who only had cultivation but no brains were really disgusting. There were only 6 people left from the 3 disasters, and almost all of the 5th tribulation eminences were wiped out. In just one battle, they had lost half of their combat strength. It was obvious that their future path would be even more difficult. The Nether King's strength was indeed beyond imagination. However, what made her more concerned was that such a powerful Nether King was actually injured. It seemed that the experts of the Divine Prefecture were more valuable than she had expected. Next, she had to find the top experts of the Eastern Divine Prefecture as soon as possible, especially before the Nether King attacked again. Otherwise, she couldn't guarantee that the people behind her would survive the next time. In the 4 Extremes Sacred Land, Ning Chen stood alone and pondered. At this moment, the Chaos Scroll trembled. Blue stars flew out one after another, condensing into a familiar figure. "It's time to make up your mind," said Fan Lingyue calmly. "I've taken in a disciple for you." "Do you want to see her?" asked Ning Chen softly. Fan Lingyue was silent for a moment. Then she said, "Let's see her once. It can be considered the last farewell before we leave. All this time, I couldn't agree with your ideals. I didn't expect that in the end, you would still have to do this," said Ning Chen self-deprecatingly. "To achieve great things, there must be sacrifices. This time, you and I will be buried with them. We can atone for our sins on the road to the Yellow Springs," said Fan Lingyue calmly. "Do you have any unfulfilled wishes?" Ning Chen sighed softly. "World peace," said Fan Lingyue slowly. It was a wish that had never changed. It sounded so ironic when it came from the military advisor of Northern Meng, who had started the war between the 2 dynasties and killed millions of people without even blinking. However, Ning Chen believed that since the day they met, he had never doubted it when he heard this sentence. "Ha!" Hearing this again, Ning Chen smiled faintly. He quietly looked at the Divine Prefecture in the distance and didn't say anything else. Chapter 396. In the Divine Prefecture, snow fell like goose feathers. Ever since the everlasting night, the weather was getting colder and colder. The casualties caused by the natural disasters were getting more and more serious. In less than 2 months, the tribulation of Yama had almost wiped out all the cultivators in the human world and brought unprecedented despair to mankind. Battle after battle, the god-level strength displayed by Yama destroyed mankind's resistance with an overwhelming advantage and wiped out the hope of the human world little by little. In the northern border of the Great Xia, the cultivators from the West Land had rested for a few days. Niu Chang looked at the figures who kept returning and narrowed her eyes slightly. The cultivators of the divine prefecture had all disappeared. It was really unbelievable. Maybe there are no more 3 disasters in the eastern region, Yu Tianhong, who had taken the elixir of the divine palace and had almost recovered from his injuries, said. Impossible, Nu Chang denied. Why? Yu Tianhong frowned slightly and asked. The eastern region has not been destroyed. This is the best proof, Nu Chang said coldly. With the power of Yama, destroying the divine prefecture was just a matter of raising his hand. The reason why the eastern region had not suffered a devastating catastrophe was that the cultivators of the divine prefecture had restrained most of Yama's energy. Let's split up and go to the imperial court in the human world to find out the reason. When she spoke up to this point, she glanced at them, and her expression turned cold as she said, "It's the most sensitive moment right now, so I'll give all of you a piece of advice. Put away that superior attitude of yours. This isn't West Earth, and no one will care about your identities. If we get into conflict with the experts of the divine prefecture because of you, then don't blame me for being merciless. Don't worry, Chang Nu. We will pay attention to our words and actions." Seeing that the atmosphere was a little stiff, the cultivators of the 3 disasters of West Buddha Mountain came out to smooth things over. Nu Chang did not say anything more. She walked lightly and disappeared after 2 steps. "Leave the Beimeng royal family to me." Yu Tianhong followed her and went north. Everyone split up and did their own things. They tried their best to find the remaining cultivators of the divine prefecture. In the main hall of the Weiyang Palace in the Great Xia Imperial Palace, a beautiful figure appeared out of thin air. Her unusually powerful aura made Qing Ning, who was accompanying Zhang Sun, look serious. "I am Chang Yu, from the homeland of West Buddha." Nu Chang revealed her identity first. Seeing the strange woman in the hall, Zhang Sun's expression did not change and said calmly, "Qing Ning, serve tea." "Many thanks." The woman responded, then walked to a chair at the side and sat down. Qing Ning walked forward and took the tea tray from the palace maid. She placed it in front of Chang Yu and politely said, "Please." "Thank you, Mississippi." Nu Chang also noticed the unusual aura of the woman in front of her and said. Qing Ning nodded and didn't say anything else. She did her own thing and returned to Zhang Sun's side. "Miss Chang Yu, may I know the reason for your visit?" Zhang Sun asked. "I want to know the whereabouts of Marquis Jiming and the others, so that we can discuss how to deal with Yama together." Female Chang did not beat around the bush and went straight to the point. After coming to the eastern region for a few days, she had a rough idea of who the main powerhouses of the divine land were. This Marquis Jiming was the primary candidate she was looking for. "Miss Chang Yu has come late. 7 days ago, after the battle between Jiming Marquis and the Nether King, there has been no news of them. I have already sent people to search for them for several days, but to no avail." Zhang Sun sighed. "Oh?" Nu Chang frowned and asked, "Where did this battle take place?" "Qizhou Mountain Range," Zhang Sun replied. "In that case, Chang Yu will take her leave first. Sorry to disturb you." While speaking, Nu Chang stood up and was about to leave. "Wait." Qing Ning, who had been silent all this time, spoke up. Nu Chang stopped and turned to look at Qing Ning, waiting for the reason. When Yama attacks, his genuine qi will shake violently and even break off. However, this time is very short and difficult to grasp. "I hope this information will be helpful to you," Qing Ning said calmly. Nu Chang narrowed her eyes and said, "Thank you." After Nu Chang left, Qing Ning helped Zhang Sun up and walked towards the bedroom. "Your Highness, his speculation was right. Those from the homeland of West Buddha sent people here after all," Qing Ning said softly. "In front of benefits, there is no difference whether it is a sage at the Great Fulfillment or the most ordinary person. He understands people's hearts better than anyone else," Zhang Sun said calmly. "I hope these people can hold on until Ning Chen and the others come back." Qing Ning sighed. The barbarian dynasty, True Extreme Country, Menyang Country, and West Earth also found nothing. No one knew why the cultivators from the divine prefecture suddenly disappeared. In the northern Meng imperial court, Yu Tianhong arrived. Ming Yu's answer was almost the same as Zhang Xuan's. However, unlike Nu Chang, the first swordsman of the Feihong Palace of the Divine Palace obviously disagreed with this answer. He thought that the northern Meng imperial court was deliberately hiding something. The atmosphere of the conversation immediately became tense. Although Ming Yu was still young, she was definitely not someone who was afraid of trouble. Facing a top cultivator of the third disaster, her expression did not change. In the depths of the northern Meng imperial palace, a dynasty's treasures floated up and down. The suppressed treasures could appear at any time. In the end, Yu Tianhong suppressed the murderous intent in his heart and turned to leave. It was a taboo for cultivators to fight in the imperial palace that possessed the country's treasures. In addition, Chang Yu had already warned him. He could not ignore it. After Yu Tianhong left, Ming Yu walked out of the main hall and looked to the east. A trace of sadness flashed through her dark eyes. "Your Highness, don't worry. He will be back soon," Purple Crystal said softly. "Yes." Ming Yu nodded and suppressed her thoughts. Her gaze became firm again. She was the Empress of the Northern Meng Empire. She had to be strong. Within the Four Extremes Holy Lands, peak experts were taking advantage of this last bit of time to recover from their injuries. Among the many auras, there were two people missing. Ning Chen and Jiang Hua. "There's no need for you to come along. I know the way." On the way to Heavenly Stellar City, Ning Chen glanced at the man beside him. "Ha, you're just a meat bun right now. Whether it's the Nether King or Rong Lu, both of them want to catch you. With your current body, who do you think you can defeat?" Jiang Hua smiled. "That's a bit reasonable, but it sounds a bit awkward." Ning Chen smiled. "The words are crude, but the logic is not crude. I haven't studied much, so I'll just make do with it," said Jiang Hua. Just as the two of them were halfway there, a blood-red light filled the sky, covering the blood moon. A boundless blood-red world sealed off their path of retreat. "Jiang Hua, you really have a crow's mouth." Ning Chen sighed as he looked at the changes around him. "Knowledge Marquis, hand over the Phoenix origin and I'll spare your life," said Rong Lu coldly. "If I could live after handing over the Phoenix origin, I would have already given it to you." Ning Chen's expression wasn't flustered at all. Right now, only Rong Lu dared to take the Phoenix origin. He had been stuck in the Four Extremities for so long that he didn't even know what the current situation was. Rong Lu frowned, feeling that something was wrong. There was no point in dragging this out any longer, so he didn't hesitate any longer. "Brother Jiang, I'll leave it to you." Ning Chen decisively took a step back and stood behind Jiang Hua. His face didn't turn red and his heart didn't skip a beat. "Ning Chen, do you know what I admire the most about you?" Jiang Hua waved his hand and Qing Yu came out of its sheath, blocking Rong Lu's palm. But a wild wind blew and the ground beneath them cracked. "To accomplish great things, I don't care about trifles," replied Ning Chen. "Ha, the thing I admire the most about you is that your face is even thicker than a city wall." Jiang Hua's saber changed directions, and a moonlight flashed. Rong Lu retreated, dodging Qing Yu's saber light. With a clench of his fist, a blood-red saber appeared in his hand. "If you don't want to help, then back up a bit. Don't affect my performance." Jiang Hua's expression froze when he saw Rong Lu's saber. His voice was filled with disdain. Ning Chen didn't say anything and retreated another 100 steps. He didn't have the slightest intention of going up to help. This phoenix body was already on the verge of collapse. If there wasn't a need, he couldn't help. As for Rong Lu, ever since he had escaped from the lightning tribulation, his body had been heavily injured. His strength was clearly not at its peak. Even if Jiang Hua couldn't defeat him, he could at least stall for some time. Within the blood-red world, the two sabers constantly clashed. One was heavy, while the other was light. Jiang Hua knew he didn't have the advantage in terms of cultivation base, so he didn't clash head-on with Rong Lu. After over a dozen exchanges, Rong Lu's expression sank. He condensed his blood yuan into his saber, and a dense blood-red light flickered. Ugh! Just at this moment, a saber pierced through his body and blood spurted out. A red-haired figure silently appeared behind Rong Lu. How could it be you? Rong Lu turned around with great difficulty. His face was filled with disbelief. Luan Fengchen pulled out the saber that had pierced through Rong Lu's back. He looked at the Rong Lu and sighed. Rong Lu, I really hope that you didn't follow us today. Huh. Blood flowed out of Rong Lu's mouth. Looking at the three, his laughter became crazier and sadder. It turned out that his every move had been calculated by others. It turned out that he had never been trusted by others. Ugh! A splash of blood dyed the sky red. Everything was red. This was the last scene that Rong Lu could see. In this chaotic world, if one did not look out for himself, the heavens would destroy him. Was he wrong? He wasn't wrong. Ning Chen walked forward and looked at the Rong Lu, who was in a daze. He said calmly, Rong Lu, let me tell you one last thing. The Nether King needs the Phoenix origin to repair the flaw in his divine body. So, even if you take the Phoenix origin today, it will only be a wedding dress for the Nether King's disciple. The last sentence entered Rong Lu's ears. Light flashed through the Rong Lu's eyes, but it quickly dimmed. So, he didn't have time to say anything else. As his last bit of consciousness faded, he was completely annihilated. The Rong Lu only understood in death. Luan Fengchen, you've lost this bet, said Ning Chen. Are people's hearts always so untrustworthy? Sighed Luan Fengchen. It's not that people's hearts aren't trustworthy. It's that before benefits, people's hearts aren't trustworthy. There are many benefits in this world. Power is a benefit, longevity is a benefit, and even gratitude and grudges are also benefits, said Ning Chen. It was like the life-knowing cultivators. When had they ever avoided benefits? The only difference was that the Rong Lu used longevity as a benefit, while the life-knowing cultivators used emotions as a benefit. Ning Chen walked forward and pressed his palm down. Blood-red light flashed, and Rong Lu's blood yuan transformed into stars that merged into his body, rapidly repairing his injuries. Chapter 397. Rong Lu's body disappeared and the blood origin entered Knowing Destiny's body. Luan Fengchen looked at the young man in front of him and for some reason, a deep chill flashed through his heart. He never knew that a person's rationality could be so terrifying. He would not be emotional or impulsive. He would not even be affected by human emotions. He was like a cold machine, accurately calculating every step. On the side, Jiang Hua felt the change in his good friend's heart. He could not help but sigh, but he did not say anything. He had learned more about Knowing Destiny from General Xian. Although he did not completely agree with Knowing Destiny's cold rationality, he could understand it. No one was born this way. However, in this chaotic world, there was no room for naivety. If Knowing Destiny did not give up everything, the Great Xia might have already collapsed. Let's go. Ning Chen glanced at the man beside him and said. N. Jiang Hua nodded and stepped forward to follow. The two went far away. Luan Fengchen looked at the two leaving and was silent for a long time. Perhaps, he should be glad that Knowing Destiny's schemes would not be used on his own people. Half a day later, Jiang Hua and Ning Chen came to the general family of Tianjin City. Today, under the subtle influence of Jiang Hua, most of the matters of the general family had been handed over to Jiang Xian. This little daughter of the general family who was bullied in the past had grown into an indispensable part of the general family. In the front hall of the general family, Jiang Xian, who was dealing with the family affairs, saw the two appear in the hall. Her eyes immediately turned red. The housekeeper in the hall put away the account book and left. Master. Jiang Xian ran up and hugged the red-clothed young man in the hall. She immediately showed her little head and greeted Jiang Hua softly, brother. Ha! Jiang Hua smiled helplessly. This sister of his was the closest to his master. You've grown up. Ning Chen rubbed the hair of the girl in his arms and said with a gentle face. The little girl who he had taken away from the general family had finally shed her inferiority complex and confusion. She had truly become a proud daughter of heaven. Ning Chen gently pushed away the girl in his arms and said softly, Jiang Xian, Master has brought you the person you want to see the most. As soon as he finished speaking, the Book of Chaos moved slightly. Specks of starlight overflowed and converged into a familiar figure. She was dressed in blue clothes and had an elegant appearance. She was as beautiful as before. Fan Lingyue, the most stunning woman in the divine continent for thousands of years. Master! Jiang Xian was startled to see the person who had suddenly appeared in front of her. She immediately knelt down. She had seen a portrait of her master in the northern Meng Emperor's palace. It was almost identical. Jianghua, let's go out, said Ning Chen. Yes. Jianghua glanced at the woman in the hall, then looked away and said, I'll treat you to a drink. It's rare for you to be so generous. It would be impolite to refuse. Ning Chen turned around and walked out. It's not easy to earn some family property. However, I'll have enough wine today, laughed Jianghua. After the two of them left, Fan Lingyue turned her gaze back and looked at the young lady in front of her. Her beautiful eyes were filled with gentleness as she said, Get up. Thank you, master. Jiang Xian got up and stood there somewhat nervously. However, she couldn't help curiously sizing up her master whom she had never seen before. In the back hall, on the roof of the west wing, the blood moon scattered a waterfall of coldness. Jianghua casually tossed a jar of wine over and said, Is that the Fan Lingyue who forced you into desperate straits several times back then? Yes. Ning Chen opened the jar and drank a mouthful of wine. He felt a burning sensation in his throat and asked, Is she beautiful? Yes. Jianghua nodded. Beautiful women are the most terrifying. That's what Mother Zhang told me. Ning Chen smiled faintly. Who is Mother Zhang? Jianghua's face flashed with curiosity. Zhang Wuji's mother, replied Ning Chen. Who is Zhang Wuji? Jianghua was even more puzzled. A silly boy from the neighboring village when I was young. Ning Chen drank another mouthful of wine and casually spouted some nonsense. You're drunk. Jianghua heard something and stretched out the jar. Perhaps. Perhaps after I'm drunk, I'll know whether or not I'm dreaming. Ning Chen clinked the jar in his hand with Jianghua's and smiled. In the front hall, Jiang Xian saw her master. After a short moment of nervousness, she also recovered her young girl's nature and curiously asked about this and that. Fan Lingyue answered every one of her questions with unprecedented patience. No matter if it was ordinary trifling matters or questions about cultivation, she answered everything she knew without holding back. After asking about many things, Jiang Xian worshipped her master's talent more and more. She discovered that as long as she could ask a question, there was nothing that her master couldn't answer. After she finished asking questions about cultivation, Jiang Xian suddenly thought of something that had puzzled her for a long time. After hesitating for a moment, she finally couldn't help but ask very carefully, Master, are you and Master really just friends? In her heart, her master and master should be a pair made in heaven. Even if they used to be on different sides, they should still have good feelings for each other. Fan Lingyue smiled faintly. She could hear the meaning behind her disciple's words. A young girl at the age of yearning for love would always yearn for a beautiful ending no matter what. Jiang Xian, you're still young. There are some things that you might not understand. Feelings are a very luxurious thing for me and your master, or rather, it's a burden that we can't bear. However, you're different from us. You still have a long life ahead of you. You have to believe that there will always be someone in this world who is worth entrusting your life to, Fan Lingyue said softly. Hearing her master's words, Jiang Xian nodded as if she understood. The confusion in her eyes was hard to hide. In the front hall and back hall of the general's house, the four people talked until the wine jars were set high, the cold moon hung high, the cold wind gradually rose, and the withered leaves fluttered, covering the sorrow of the world. Ning Chen and Jiang Hua drank while talking nonsense. Perhaps the two of them didn't even remember what they were talking about. It had nothing to do with the suffering of the world or the underworld king. They only talked about which courtesan was the most beautiful in Fallen Moon City and which wine was the best to drink in Heavenly Stellar City. Men talked about women and wine, and it should also be about women and wine. If there's a chance, I'll definitely go to Fallen Moon City and see if the courtesan you're talking about is really that beautiful. Jiang Hua's face was full of disbelief. You can doubt my character, but you can't doubt my taste, Ning Chen said as he drank the wine in his hand. There's no need to doubt your character because you don't have any. As for your taste, I'll evaluate it after I see it, Jiang Hua smiled. The wine is good. If I can survive this time, I'll send some to Old Man Lu. I haven't been there in a long time. Ning Chen lay down and closed his eyes, talking to himself. In the cold wind, Zhi Ming fell asleep and didn't say anything else. He didn't know how long he hadn't closed his eyes, but at this moment, he didn't open them again. Jiang Hua smiled faintly and drank mouthful after mouthful of wine. He also didn't say anything else. In the Divine Continent, in the Eternal Night sect, the Underworld King had been recuperating for several days. Other than the irreversible damage to his Qi, all the wounds on his divine body had recovered. Bai Jiang, the Underworld King said calmly. Your subordinate is here. Bai Jiang knelt down and said. Come with me to open the passage between the two territories. Didn't you always want to kill Luoli with your own hands? I'll give you this opportunity, the Underworld King said calmly. Thank you, Your Majesty, for fulfilling my wish. Bai Jiang's eyes flashed with murderous intent as he said respectfully. At the same time, Niu Chang and the others who couldn't find the experts of the Divine Continent rushed directly from the Qizhou mountain range to the Eternal Night sect. According to the aftermath of the battle, even Niu Chang had to admit that the experts of the Divine Continent didn't have a high chance of surviving this time. However, it wasn't that they didn't gain anything. At least the experts of the Divine Continent left behind the Underworld King's weakness, so they wouldn't be completely unprepared like last time. In front of the Eternal Night sect, figures landed one after another, wanting to challenge the Underworld King's power again. A black aura surged, and the Underworld King appeared. He glanced at the group of people blocking his way, and his calm eyes flashed with indifference. Humans always didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. It seemed that sparing their lives last time was unnecessary. Be careful, the Underworld King's injury seems to have healed. The three disasters of West Buddha Mountain warned with a serious expression. They wanted to take advantage of the Underworld King's injury to launch a surprise attack, but they didn't expect the Underworld King to recover so quickly. Niu Chang waved her hand and said coldly, follow the plan and set up the formation. The sin-cleansing spiritual rhinoceros was unsheathed, and dazzling golden light rose endlessly. The divine weapon of Tianfu Mountain, the weapon that could cleanse sins, reappeared in the world. Yu Tianhong pulled out the heaven sword at the same time, and his genuine vitality reached its peak. He took a step forward and started the battle. The other 5 of the 3 disasters watched attentively, and they condensed their genuine vitality, ready to attack at any time. The heaven sword was about to reach him, but the Underworld King raised his hand and blocked the divine weapon. He gathered the genuine vitality in his palm, and his power surged out. It seemed like a casual move, but it was so powerful that it was shocking. Yu Tianhong had been prepared. The moment the deity attacked, he withdrew his sword and retreated quickly, avoiding the descending divine power in advance. The next moment, the sin-cleansing spiritual rhinoceros swept past quickly, and the divine weapon that could kill sins shone brightly. You've improved, but unfortunately, you're still too weak. The Underworld King waved his hand to shake off the divine weapon of Tianfu Mountain. He turned his palm over, and the divine light illuminated the world, suppressing the Buddha's light and destroying the world. Niu Chang retreated quickly to avoid the divine light. She couldn't avoid the divine move from 1,000 feet away. She activated the sin-cleansing spiritual rhinoceros holy chi and blocked the destructive divine power. The overflowing blood dyed the divine weapon red. At the same time, the other 5 of the 3 disasters moved. They blocked the 5 vital acupoints of the Underworld King, but the protective genuine vitality surged out, and the divine weapon couldn't go any further. In the moment of the stalemate, the Heaven Sword arrived, and its sharp edge pierced the deity's heart. The Underworld King raised his hand, and the divine move gathered. Niu Chang turned back, and the sin-cleansing spiritual rhinoceros gathered the genuine vitality of the deity again. The 3 waves of attacks took turns, and under the great consumption, the genuine vitality of the deity was finally shaken. His attack was weakened, but he still knocked Yu Tianhong and the other 5 people away. After the divine move was made, the genuine vitality's vibration intensified. The sin-cleansing spiritual rhinoceros pierced an inch, but just as it was about to touch the body of the deity, the sword stopped and couldn't move forward. The Underworld King's hand grabbed the divine weapon, and blood dripped down from the sword. The Buddhist holy chi and the divine power kept colliding, and the karmic sword was extraordinary. The wound on the deity's hand couldn't be healed immediately. Chapter 398. In front of the Eternal Night Cult, the experts of West Earth teamed up to fight the Nether King. Wave after wave of attacks were launched without any gaps. The number 1 swordsman of the Divine Palace turned into a stream of light. His heavenly sword slashed out streaks of sharp light as he tried his best to seal off the opportunity for the deity to attack. Niu Chang transformed Buddha Mountain into a weapon to cleanse sin. Dazzling golden light followed like a shadow as it continuously attacked the deity's vital points. Is this all you have? The Nether King raised his hand, and his true essence surged. The 7 divine weapons suddenly became sluggish. Shortly after, the divine aura spread out, and everyone was sent flying. Ah! They vomited mouthfuls of vermilion red. It was the powerlessness of humans to defy the heavens. Even someone as strong as Niu Chang, a peak expert who was half a step into the great perfection realm, and 6 of the top experts of West Earth, who knew the deity's weakness, still couldn't shake the divine aura. The Nether King lost his patience. He flipped his palms, and raging waves surged out from the surroundings. The divine aura shook the 9 heavens. Seeing that the divine aura was about to descend, Niu Chang raised her cultivation to the limit. The spiritual light of cleansing sin sublimated to the extreme. The holy light pierced through heaven and earth, resisting the divine aura, illuminating the world. Ha! Yu Tianhong and the others concentrated their true essence at the same time, gathering everyone's strength to increase the power of the divine weapons. The 2 extremes collided, and a huge explosion occurred. The sky collapsed and the earth collapsed. The ground cracked and sand billowed, spreading out for thousands of feet. With a crack, the divine weapons broke and flew to the side. This was the most despairing ending. Humans couldn't defy the heavens. Before the deity, they could only accept the judgment. Figures fell to the ground one after another. Blood spurted out from their bodies, dyeing the dust and sand red. They were forever buried in the East Domain. Only the 2 of you are left. The Nether King raised his hand and flipped his palm. Heavenly fire surged. The next move would completely end the lives of the blasphemers. Immeasurable life, immeasurable death, reincarnation after reincarnation. Seeing that her life was at stake, Niu Chang used the spiritual heart in her body to activate the life-saving move that she could only use after reaching the Great Perfection Realm. Suddenly, an ancient and majestic dragon gate appeared, blocking the divine flames. The 2 extremes collided, and the space rumbled. The dragon gate responded and dissipated. Niu Chang and Yu Tianhong had already disappeared in the sky. The Nether King coldly snorted. His figure flickered, and an afterimage flashed as he quickly followed. When Bai Jiang saw this, he stomped his foot and also followed. The hearts of the 2 people who were seriously injured as they fled to the east became heavier and heavier. The power of the gods was not something that could be resisted by the power of human beings. Could it be that the destruction of the human world 30,000 years ago was going to happen again? It was unknown whether it was a coincidence or some other reason, but the 2 of them escaped to the Ascension Valley. If they went further east, they would reach the easternmost land, the end of the world. At the same time, cultivators from the divine prefecture walked out of seclusion in the holy lands of the four ultimate realms, indicating that the final battle was about to begin. Luo Li and Li Luo fused together, gathering all of their power, reaching the peak of their lives. Their might continuously rose, reaching the peak of the third calamity. The hierarch of the Eternal Night, the number one cultivator in the divine prefecture, and the former number one figure of the Eternal Night cult. Although he had a mortal body, he was astonishingly powerful. If it were not for the lack of time, perhaps the divine prefecture would really have a supreme cultivator in the great fulfillment realm. Are you ready? The red light gathered and knowing destiny appeared. He looked at the figures in front of him and said calmly. We can set off at any time, said the Eternal Night hierarch. Xia Zi also walked out, surrounded by demonic qi. The demonic mark between his eyebrows became redder and redder. What little humanity he had left was about to disappear. Too many people had been sacrificed in this divine tribulation. Now, no matter the price, they had to send Pluto back. Everyone moved and headed to the top of the ninth heaven. The final battle had finally arrived. In front of the Ascension Valley, a god appeared. Yu Tianhong and Nu Chang had nowhere to go. The god's might shook, and the two of them flew back more than 100 feet. Blood kept dripping from the corners of their mouths. The two of them were severely injured and covered in blood. Before the god, the three calamities and the great fulfillment realm were just illusions. Pluto glanced coldly at the two people who had been sent flying. He ignored them and walked to the passage between the two realms. He flipped his right hand, and the divine flame roared out, crashing into the seal set by knowing destiny. With a loud bang, the heaven and earth of the two realms shook. The seal flickered continuously, showing signs of instability. At this moment, a five-colored flowing light swept out from the space passage. It was extremely sharp and carried a majestic fate energy. It slashed toward the god in front of it. Pluto raised his hand and blocked the divine weapon. The god's might spread, and the Nianqing flew out and stabbed into the ground. The last remaining fate energy dissipated. At this moment, many figures walked out of the space passage. The cultivators of the divine prefecture who had disappeared for a long time appeared again. There was no turning back. This battle would be the last chance for the cultivators of the divine prefecture to stop the god from destroying the world. If they failed, the human world would be doomed forever. Are you finally willing to show yourself? Knowing destiny, Marquis. Pluto looked at the red-robed young man behind the crowd and said lightly. Sorry to keep you waiting, Ningchen replied calmly. This is your last chance. Don't disappoint the god again. Pluto raised the hand of God again. In an instant, the heaven and earth collapsed. The Ascension Valley disappeared for no reason, and the land within 100 miles collapsed violently. Heavenly fire rose all over the sky with destructive power. The ultimate gods might once again made people feel the despair of the end of the world. Just as the god's might was about to appear, knowing destiny did not wait any longer. He leaped into the sky and stood at the end of the sky. Blue starlight overflowed from his body and condensed into the most beautiful figure. Knowing destiny and military counselor worked together for the first time after 6 years. The scroll of light and the scroll of chaos slowly merged. Suddenly, the rules of heaven and earth collapsed. A strange destructive aura descended from the sky and enveloped the entire land of the divine prefecture. I'll take my leave first, Fan Lingyue looked at the young man beside her. A smile flashed across her beautiful face. Take care, Ningchen nodded and said softly. Fan Lingyue took one last look at the divine prefecture below her. Her figure immediately dissipated and merged into the two scrolls. In the next moment, the divine prefecture suffered a great calamity. Tens of thousands of people cried in grief. Figures collapsed one after another, and blood splattered. Regardless of gender, age, millions of bloody light soared into the sky. Endless sorrow and resentment instantly covered the moon in the sky. The shocking scene shocked everyone. Only the pair of emotionless eyes in the sky looked at the desolate scene of the divine prefecture without any change. Emotionless, heartless, and fickle. At this moment, no one could understand the figure in red in the sky. Could it be that knowing Destiny's heart was really made of iron and stone? Oh? Shenming's eyes flashed with a strange light. Under the suppression of the resentment, the rising divine flame immediately weakened. The moment he attacked, his true essence shook violently. The hierarch of eternal night, Xia Zi, Marquis Kaishian, and the others came to their senses. They joined forces to block the attack and retreated 3 steps. The true qi in their bodies surged violently. Nian Qing flew up. Knowing Destiny held his blade and disappeared instantly. When he reappeared, he was already in front of Yama. The extremely fast blade slashed across the sharp edge of death. Somehow, the blade had turned blood red. The resentment weapon strengthened by resentment was so cold that it made people tremble. Seeing this, Luan Fengchen and Jiang Hua also waved their blades and rushed forward. They defended knowing Destiny with all their strength. Yama shifted his body and dodged the sharp edges. He turned his palm over and a vigorous palm power surged out. Marquis Kaishian, Xian Tian, and Xia Zi blocked the attack. With a bang, they retreated several steps and the corners of their mouths turned red. Outside the battle, the falling star drew the star mark. The green arrow light gathered and shot out in an instant. The true essence around Shenming's body appeared and blocked the arrow light. Before he could counterattack, the blood-red resentment weapon closed in on him and blocked his chance to attack. The bright and chaotic scrolls merged into one. Fan Lingyue's last consciousness scattered between heaven and earth, adding the resentment of millions of creatures to the body of Yama. Shenming's body was restrained and couldn't use his full strength. He showed signs of defeat for the first time. Dawn appeared. The hierarch of eternal night circulated the true essence around him. Red lightning rumbled and the smoke cloud divine spear shone with red light as it slashed toward Shenming. Luoli, your opponent is me. Bai Zhang's figure flashed and blocked the divine spear with his sword. Wu Guan, whose cultivation had doubled, coldly looked at the first person in the eternal night hierarch in 1,000 years. The hierarch of eternal night's expression also turned cold. Without any nonsense, his body moved and the divine spear fell with great force. The swords and spears clashed again. The sharp edges kept flashing around the two. Their grudges were hard to resolve. Only death was the end of their hatred. The two sides had different opponents, but they were equally tragic. Drops of blood spilled and dyed the ground red. In front of Yama, there were 3 blades. One was attacking and the other 2 were defending. Each blade was faster than the last. Marquis triumphant return, Xian Tian, and Xia Zi used all their strength to block the attacks. The falling star formation was clear on offense and defense. In the distance, Luofei, who was the only one who knew Ning Chen's plan, stood outside the battle. She watched with rapt attention but didn't participate in the battle. Not bad, huh? Yama grabbed the blade of resentment weapon and waved his hand to send Jiang Hua and Luan Fengchen flying. The divine flame around him rose again and slammed toward the knowing destiny body. Vast military might. Marquis triumphant return's figure flashed and blocked the attack with his blade. A brilliant slash fell and blocked the divine power. Void extinction Xian Tian. Xian Tian coordinated with him and endless sword flow crashed into the destructive divine flame. Demonic sword, reincarnation. The Emperor activated his demonic vitality and blocked the divine power with a reincarnation sword. With a bang, the 3 figures retreated more than 10 steps. Blood kept dripping from their arms. Ah! After the divine power was used, the blade of resentment weapon broke through the protective true vitality and pierced into Yama's chest. Blood splattered everywhere. Seeing this, Xia Zi rushed to the front of the god and stabbed the vital part of Yama's heart with the demonic sword. Do you think it's that easy? Yama's face turned cold. He endured the pain in his chest and pushed the demonic sword away with his palm. In the next moment, there was a loud bang in the sky. Lightning fell from the sky and gathered on the god's palm. The divine power spread out and forced the people who wanted to help to retreat. Knowing destiny, Marquis, your existence makes the process of the gods destroying the human world more interesting. However, it's time to end it. Yama raised his hand and pressed it on Ning Chen's chest. An endless gravitational force spread out. Suddenly, the knowing destiny body collapsed. Yama, the human world won't be destroyed. You can't win. The phoenix origin left his body and Ning Chen's figure kept flickering. In the blink of an eye, his figure disappeared and returned to the god's body. With the origin back, Yama opened his eyes and a terrifying divine power spread out. The 12 wings of sin spread out on his back and disappeared in an instant. Yama, the lord of the 7 ultimate celestial realm, and the god of creation of the 5 regions. At this moment, the last flaw disappeared. The vibrating true vitality around him gradually stabilized. Chapter 399. The Underworld King used all of his power, and his divine might shook the world. Black energy continuously spread out, exuding a destructive pressure that frightened even gods and ghosts. The aftershock of the attack caused everyone present to be pushed back by more than 10 steps. Blood continuously flowed from their mouths. The most extreme result was that the 7 ultimate divine body was complete. His true yuan was endless, vast, and heavy. It's over. The Nether King raised his hand and thunder roared. Dazzling lightning bolts shot out and blasted the people in front of him away. Blood splashed out, dyeing the sky red. There was no longer any hope. The destruction of the world had already become a foregone conclusion. Xian Tian, who bore the brunt of the attack, forcefully withstanding the majority of the divine might. His sword broke and he fell to the ground. Xian Tian. Grief flashed through Luan Fengshen's eyes. He waved his hand and the resentment soldier flew into his hand. He took a step forward and turned into a streak of light, slashing toward the god. You can't. Jiang Hua was startled and rushed forward to save him. Are you angry? Are you filled with regret? Unfortunately, you've already missed the last chance the god gave you. The Nether King flipped his palm and divine flames surged like an ocean. Jiang Hua was immediately sent flying. Blood spurted out as he crashed into the ground. The shockwave sent Luan Fengchen flying back dozens of feet as blood flowed out of his body. Jiang Xian, before he could finish his words, the light in Jiang Hua's eyes dimmed. A genius of a generation, the hope of the general family for 100 years, had died. Jiang Hua. Luan Fengshen's heart was filled with pain. He staggered back, but he couldn't defy the heavens. He couldn't resist his fate. Only anger and regret could devour his heart. On the other side, the Eternal Night Hierarch saw the sudden change in the battle. He quickly rushed forward to help. At the same time, Bai Jiang moved. Blue blood sky tears streaked across the sky, blocking the path ahead. You won't be able to go anywhere today. Wu Guan swung his sword to block the attack. The divine weapon glowed with a green light as it drew out streaks of cold light, adding a touch of sorrow to the tragic battle. The sword stabbed into his body, causing blood to gush out. The Eternal Night Hierarch grabbed the sword with his left hand and slashed down with the smoke cloud divine dagger axe. Luoli, don't think that you're the only one who isn't afraid of death. Whether it's courage or anything else, I've never been inferior to you. Bai Jiang snorted and blocked the dagger axe with a flip of his palm. He didn't give in at all. He wanted to defeat his opponent. Bang! However, at this moment, a green and red figure separated from the Eternal Night Hierarch's body and pressed a palm on Wu Guan's chest, bringing forth a great waterfall of blood. Bai Jiang didn't have time to react. He was sent flying backward several paces. His body flashed, and his spear slashed through the air. A head flew up into the air, shocking the world for the last time. All that remained was regret and unwillingness. Wu Guan had lost his life, and the enmity between them had dissipated. The Eternal Night Hierarch didn't linger in the slightest and rushed to the rescue with his spear. This was their last chance, and they couldn't afford to lose again no matter what. Scarlet lightning surged, and the divine halberd slashed down. The deity flipped his palm to block it. The boundless scarlet lightning was unable to move even half a step forward. Wild sand spreads 10,000 li. Marquis victorious returned stepped forward and brandished his saber, causing the sand to churn violently. With a slash of his saber, the earth split open. You did your best. The Nether King remained motionless like a mountain. He raised his hand and grabbed the brilliant world blade. With a loud clang, the blade was broken. His powerful palm imprinted on Triumph Return's chest. A pool of blood splattered as he retreated several steps. In front of the divine might, it was difficult to return victorious. The great Xia war god looked at the ground in front of him with reluctance. This life was over. There were regrets, but no regrets. Triumph Return. The Eternal Night Hierarch revealed a sorrowful expression. The situation in front of him was so difficult that he couldn't see the slightest bit of hope. Sword style, heaven overturning sword. At that moment, a sharp sword light rushed over from afar. Soon after, two different sword lights appeared and intertwined, transforming into a dazzling sword that slashed towards the deity. Jian Yi, Jian Er, and Mu Qianshang appeared on the battlefield. The three swords joined hands to resist the divine might. The Nether King waved his hand, scattering the sword lights. He turned around and released his true yuan. Boundless divine might surged out, attacking everyone present. With a loud bang, everyone retreated. At the moment of crisis, 5 more silhouettes appeared and stood around the deity. Qing He, Zhongyong, Jiyu, Taiping, and the few remaining martial marquises of Grand Xia had all arrived. Even the Beiwu Marquis who had betrayed Grand Xia had come. At this moment, they had cast aside their enmity and joined hands once again. Pillars of light soared into the sky. The 5 martial marquises' strength soared to the extreme. The heavens and earth sensed it and sent down a demonic tribulation. The 5 pillars of light pierced through the heavens and earth. The martial marquises' karma brought about an unprecedented great tribulation. The resentment that filled the sky seemed to have found an outlet and crazily gathered. The heavenly demon tribulation instantly transformed into a terrifying destructive force that drowned the 5 martial marquises. Within the 5 pillars of light, the Nether King felt his body sink and his aura become suppressed. World wave. East flow. Under the demonic tribulation, Qing He took the lead and the 5 martial marquises moved together. They forcefully endured the pain of the heavenly tribulation and instantly arrived in front of the deity. Using themselves as the weapon and the demonic tribulation as the power, the raging waves surged out. This was the scene of humanity's will reaching the pinnacle. Even the deity was moved. The surrounding divine flames roared and his palm shook the raging waves. He used his full strength without holding back. This was the deity's respect for the opponent in front of him. The powerful resentment added to his body. The Nether King took half a step back. The true chi in his body trembled violently and forcefully blocked the might of the demonic tribulation. The heavenly demon tribulation dissipated and the divine flames engulfed the martial marquises. A drop of blood quietly fell from the corner of the deity's mouth. He was actually injured by the demonic tribulation. You guys, name, the Nether King said seriously. Grand Xia Martial Marquis. Qing He opened his mouth and in the next moment, his body scattered. Beiwu chuckled and then also disappeared. In the end, he was still unable to get rid of this title that he had carried for half his life. I'll leave it to you guys. After the final words of farewell, Jiyu, Zhongyong, and Taiping scattered and disappeared from the world. The Grand Xia martial marquises were finished. Thousands of miles away, Marquis Anling and Kong Yu looked at the disappearing pillars of light and became silent. A newly conferred martial marquis and a future martial marquis. At this moment, they finally understood why Marquis Zhiming was unwilling to express his opinion on the matter of the two being conferred marquises. In front of Ascension Valley, the divine tribulation shook the world. Heaven and earth wept in grief. The unceasing falling figures were the stubbornness of humanity. Facing the deities, they would rather die in battle than lower their heads. The three swords once again trembled. The star-marked bow was drawn and the arrow pierced through the sky. Bearing the will of the martial Marquis, the battle began again. The Eternal Night Hierarch and Xia Zi clashed with their swords. Demonic power and red lightning surged as they joined forces to shake the deities. Blood was spilled and injuries were swallowed. At this moment, there was no way back. There was no other thought. There was only battle until death. In the distance, Yu Tianhong and Nu Chang, who were shaken out of the battle by the aftermath of the battle, looked at the fierce battle between the divine prefecture's powerhouses and the deities. They were shocked beyond words. Outside the battle, no matter how fierce the battle was, Luofei did not make a move. She stood there motionless. In the sky, the brilliance of the bright and chaotic scrolls that had merged into one became dimmer and dimmer. Fine cracks appeared and spread horizontally and vertically. The two scrolls that caused chaos in the human world had suffered too much backlash and were on the verge of collapse. The bloody light of the resentment of millions of creatures gradually weakened. The Nether King's body became stronger and stronger. As the palm roared, the heavens and earth trembled. Divine power descended. Jian Er could not dodge in time. Seeing that he could not escape death, he used a broken sword to block the attack. With a bang, he was sent flying. Senior brother. Jian Er's pupils shrank. His body was also sent flying by the aftershock. Live on. The broken sword shattered and the swordsman fell. The desolate city's sword one disappeared. In the most tragic battle, the sunken ground was dyed red with blood. The will of the humans made the deities look askance. Since the creation of the world, this was the first time the deities put down their pride and treated the people in front of them as real opponents. Divine flames rose in the sky, and their power rose rapidly. Although they were suppressed by the resentment, they were still shockingly powerful. The Eternal Night Hierarch and Xia Zi joined forces to block the deity's attack again. However, after a loud bang, the smoke cloud divine spear and demonic sword could not withstand the deity's power. They cried out continuously and cracks appeared. In this hopeless battle, sword light and halberd light intertwined. This was the humans' last struggle to delay the deity's destruction. Time's up. It's time to end this. At this point, the battle was about to come to an end. Pulling back the other four regions was imminent. Pluto didn't want to delay any longer. He waved his hand and forced the people in front of him to retreat. Then, he raised both his palms. With a rumble, thunder fell from the sky and gathered on the deity's left palm. Then, divine flames surged out and turned into a huge vortex. It roared and swirled on the deity's right hand. Both moves were used at the same time. The earth moved and the mountains collapsed. In the distance, Luan Fengchen saw this. He used the two blades in his hands to support his injured body. He took a step forward and entered the battle again. The resentment weapon and the blood blade slashed out, and a dazzling blood-red light pierced towards the deity's heart. With a clanging sound, the deity's protective true yuan blocked the blades. However, at this moment, the divine spear pointed to the sky and forcibly absorbed the remaining power of the deity's attack. In an instant, red lightning surged, and its power increased several times. Extreme lightning, sacrifice to the heavens. The deity's most powerful attack appeared in the world again. The Hierarch of Eternal Night slashed down with his spear. Red lightning with endless destructive power roared out and crashed into the deity's protective true chi. When the two attacks collided, the divine spear shattered. At the same time, the red lightning broke through the deity's protective true yuan and penetrated the deity's body. The Pluto groaned. Blood flowed out of his mouth. It was the first time he had been seriously injured since the battle. With a cracking sound, the lightning illuminated the dusky horizon. The deity endured the severe pain in his chest and used both of his techniques at the same time. The extremely powerful divine technique pressed down with a loud bang. In an instant, the space around him collapsed and disappeared. The land within 100 miles was devastated. The attack that could destroy the world was not something that humans could resist. Seeing that their last hope was about to be destroyed, the deity's endless resentment in the world fell from the sky and blocked the deity's destructive power. In the most extreme of collisions, light and light shattered, annihilated into nothingness. The divine might also subsequently dissipated, scattering between heaven and earth. The resentment was exhausted, and the last shackle on the Pluto's body disappeared. Just as the deities were about to attack again to end the battle, a piercing phoenix cry resounded through the 9 heavens. In the deity's body, the last of the great righteousness left by the headmaster burst out. The two forces collided. The true yuan around the Pluto shook violently and showed signs of instability. At this moment, outside the battle, Luo Fei, who had not made a move until now, finally moved. The open heavenly book, and the bright moonlight illuminated the world. Chapter 400. Luo Fei attacked and the moonlight shone on the mortal world. In an instant, the void froze, flowers stopped blooming, birds stopped chirping, and heaven and earth seemed dead. Phoenix cries shook the sky as knowing destiny's consciousness resisted fiercely, drawing out the righteous energy from the headmaster. As the two forces clashed, Pluto's true chi stagnated and a flaw appeared in his protective true essence. Knowing destiny Marquis, do you want to fight me to the death again? Pluto snorted, his aura fluctuated as his divine power suppressed the resistance of his consciousness. In the battle, the moonlight shone and the backlash was self-inflicted. Blood dripped from the corner of Luo Fei's mouth as her divine power was unstoppable. Every breath was a struggle for life. You have the power of no scroll left by knowing destiny Marquis in your body, hurry up and attack. Luo Fei urged. Xia Zi's eyes trembled as he looked at Pluto whose consciousness was constantly changing. The demonic sword in his hand was unprecedentedly heavy. One was for the people of the divine prefecture, and the other was for the life of his friend. Sacrificing one person in exchange for peace in the divine prefecture was a cruel choice. One sword to send knowing destiny to peace in the world. Xia Zi, don't let down knowing destiny Marquis' sacrifice. The Eternal Night Hierarch and Luan Fengchen dashed out, and the two sabers slammed into the god's protective true energy. Falling stars assisted at the same time as the star mark bow was drawn. A red arrow pierced through the air and shot towards the heart of the god. Half a day's remnant crimson moon. Mu Qiansheng and Jian Er waved their swords and rushed forward. The 4 divine weapons resisted the divine power and tried to break through the god's protective true essence to open a path for the emperor. A mere human dares to defile the face of a god, foolish. The underworld king opened his eyes, and the wings of sin appeared indistinctly. With a flip of his palm, incomparable divine might roared out. Pluto, you can't win. A resolute look flashed across the Eternal Night Hierarch's eyes. He raised the true origin around him to the limit and blocked the divine move head-on. With a bang, the divine might entered his body and destroyed his bones. Blood spurted out and scattered all over the sky. At the same time, the red arrow arrived and helped the sword. The god's protective true essence finally reached its limit and dissipated. Demonic sword. Xia Zi suppressed the pain in his heart and concentrated his demonic chi into the demonic sword. With the power of the heavenly book, the sword reached the god's heart. Buried heaven. A sword pierced through his body. Blood gushed out and flowed down along the edge of the demonic sword. He had killed a deity and left the knowing destiny state. The Nether King snorted and sent the person in front of him flying with a flip of his palm. He took half a step back and the aura around him flickered continuously. His divine body was destroyed. Black smoke surged out and his feathers fell. The consciousness of a deity that had descended to the mortal world could no longer stay. He could return to the 7 extinction celestial realm at any time. Red stars converged, and the remnant soul left the body of the deity. Knowing destiny manifested to bid farewell to Yama. Jiming Marquis, you've won this time. However, there are always winners and losers in battles. I hope that when I return, the world will still be so lucky. As soon as he finished speaking, the god of hell's body dissipated, and rays of light flew in all directions. This was the power of the origin that had been seized by the gods when they created the divine body. The phoenix origin and the ghost origin flew out in different directions. Knowing destiny moved and grabbed the ghost origin without hesitation. Finally, success. The Eternal Night Hierarch was half kneeling on the ground, propping himself up with his blade. He was also nearing the end of his life. Father! Luo Fei rushed forward and injected her true qi, trying to save the former's life. No need. Knowing that he couldn't save himself, the Eternal Night Hierarch waved his hand to stop Luo Fei's useless efforts. He forced himself to stand up and looked at Jiming Marquis in front of him. Boy, if you have any unfulfilled wishes, hurry up. Hierarch, may we meet again? Ning Chen calmly said. Never. The Eternal Night Hierarch replied. At the last moment of his life, Ning Chen finally unloaded the heavy burden on his body. His figure flew out and rushed towards the direction of the Marquis mansion. Jiming Marquis mansion. Knowing destiny appeared, the state of his remnant soul became more and more unstable. He couldn't hold on for much longer. Marquis! Brother! Ruo Shi and Ning Shi, who had been waiting in the mansion, unconsciously covered their mouths. Tears dripped down. I'm sorry, but in the end, I still broke my promise. Ning Chen glanced at the two with a gentle look in his eyes. He had promised to live, but he couldn't do it. Ning Shi opened the secret room. I don't have much time left. I need to save Ghost Girl as soon as possible. Ning Chen whispered. Ning Shi nodded with tears in her eyes and stepped into the study. She came to the bookshelf behind the desk and waved her hand to open the door of the secret room. In the center of the secret room, there was an ice coffin lying horizontally. Inside the coffin, a beautiful red figure was sleeping peacefully without the slightest pain. Ning Chen stepped forward and took out the ghost origin. He slowly pushed it into the coffin. The next moment, ghost qi filled the air and the ghost origin disappeared into the woman's dantian. The waiting process was particularly long. 1 minute, 2 minutes, the figure in the coffin never woke up. Ning Chen's eyes flashed with a touch of sadness. Can't I wait any longer? The time was up. Ning Chen sighed deeply and turned to look at the two behind him. He said goodbye, Ning Shi, Ruo Shi, goodbye. As soon as his voice fell, the remnant soul dissipated and scattered between heaven and earth. Knowing destiny's remnant soul disappeared. At the same time, in the Marquis mansion, knowing destiny's main body's aura quickly dissipated. In the homeland of West Buddha, Ah Man's heart was connected to her veins. Her heart was connected to Ah Man's heart, and the crystal flowers supporting her heart withered. Her life force also quickly dissipated. The sword rack fell, and the sad sound of the ancient swords accompanied her for many years. The sword heart had feelings. Yan Qin Wang's body trembled and he powerlessly closed his eyes. So what if he wasn't defeated? So what if he was a legend? At this moment, there was nothing he could do. In Ascension Valley, Luan Fengchen hugged Xian Tian and Jiang Hua's corpses. Without a word, he stepped into the spatial channel and bid farewell to the divine prefecture, returning to the four extreme realms. Luo Fei, I'm sorry. The sovereign apologized. His demonic qi surged and his last consciousness was gradually annihilated. The sovereign and the devil's figures flashed and disappeared to the east. Luo Fei didn't chase after them. She silently hugged her father's corpse and walked towards the west. Mu Qian Shang, Jian Er, and Luo Xingchen also took the souls of the dead and left. On this day, the strong cultivators of the divine prefecture all disappeared. After a tragic battle, the injured went into seclusion, and the dead were buried. In the divine prefecture, the blood moon set in the west. The sun rose for the first time in 2 months. The warm morning light shone on the world, dispelling the darkness and the coldness. It's dawn. It's finally dawn. Countless people cried tears of joy. After experiencing despair and the divine tribulation, they finally understood the preciousness of peace. This must be the result of the Marquis risking their lives. The people of Great Xia looked at the blazing sun in the east, and their hearts were filled with gratitude. In the sky above the imperial city of Great Xia, Nu Chang appeared. Looking at the people kneeling on the ground, a faint light flashed in her eyes. In the next moment, Nu Chang disappeared and came to the Marquis residence. She waved her hand and took Zhi Ming's body and left again. Oh! They succeeded. In the homeland of West Buddha, the masters of the Divine Palace and Demon Temple felt the disappearance of the Nether King's aura. They stepped out of the palace and stood in the void. In that case, it's our turn. Zi Tiangong looked at the Demon Buddha in the distance and said, "That's my intention." The Demon Buddha nodded and replied. The two masters joined forces and attacked at the same time. With a boom, the space passage between the two regions opened again. The people of the Divine Prefecture who had just survived the Divine Tribulation were shocked again. Looking at the huge ravine in the sky, they were shocked. One figure after another walked out. Although their powerful auras were far inferior to the Nether Kings, for the Divine Prefecture who had just experienced the Divine Tribulation, it was already an irresistible force. Build the Four Corners Divine Towers as soon as possible. Don't make any mistakes, the man in the lead said. Yes. The other three nodded and agreed. The four figures rushed out in four directions. No one could stop them. 2 days later, the Four Corners Divine Towers were built one after another. They towered into the clouds with an imposing aura. The Northern Meng Imperial Court, the Barbarian Dynasty, Yang Hong, and the Barbarian King tried to stop them, but they failed and returned with heavy injuries. Finally, the day has come. In the Divine Palace and Demon Temple, the two masters of the Consummation Plane felt the origin power of heaven and earth from the Divine Prefecture of the Eastern region. Their eyes flashed with a dazzling light. The origin power of each region was limited. The more they obtained, the greater the possibility of entering the next realm. The unknown realm, the unknown power, no one had set foot in it before. The power of the two continued to rise. The dragon gate behind them appeared and gradually became solid. In the Divine Prefecture, the damage caused by the Four Corners Divine Towers was getting worse. Disasters occurred everywhere. However, for the sake of the Nether King's destruction of the human world, the masters of the Divine Prefecture had all died. They could no longer stop this foreign disaster. Demonic Buddha, Violet Heavenly Palace, your ambition has impressed me. In the old site of the academy, Nu Chang looked at the Four Corners Divine Towers. Her eyes were cold. It seemed that she was not the only one who wanted to see the next realm. In a temporary wooden house, the soul-suppressing orb stabilized the remaining 2 souls of knowing destiny. 3 fate reversal pills forcibly kept the latter's last breath so that his vitality would not dissipate. Nu Chang wanted the tomes of arcane, especially the scroll of life. However, after several days of soul-searching, she found nothing. Knowing destiny had lost 1 soul. His memory and consciousness were incomplete. After the completion, no one knew what the next realm was. No one had ever set foot in it. Perhaps it existed 30,000 years ago. However, it had completely disappeared after the Nether King destroyed the world. No one knew the origin of the tomes of arcane. She guessed that it might be helpful for stepping into the next realm. The scroll of life was the beginning of the tomes of arcane. It could be integrated and transformed into any cultivation body. For her who had been stuck in the completion realm for hundreds of years, it was very tempting. Now the trouble was that the soul-searching was fruitless. If she wanted to get the scroll of life, she had to complete the missing soul of this person and awaken him. However, it was not an easy thing to do. Since ancient times, the 3 souls and 7 spirits had been the most difficult taboo for the human body. Even Nu Chang, who was in the completion realm, could not fully understand it. Perhaps only the existence of the Nether King, who was beyond the world, could see through the secrets. She couldn't create a soul out of thin air. The only thing she could do now was to find the phoenix origin that had disappeared. There was definitely a portion of this person's soul power left there. She had to find a way to complete this incomplete soul. Judging from the aura of the numerous essences when they dispersed, Feng Yuan was flying towards the southwest. There was still a long way to go. She had to make the best use of her time. Otherwise, once this person's vitality dissipated, all her previous efforts would be in vain. Chapter 401. Around the Divine Prefecture, the 4 divine towers connected the sky and the earth. A strange power spread out, and the origin energy between heaven and earth was constantly sent to the other side. It plundered without any care for the consequences, causing the origin energy of this incomplete world to rapidly dry up. After the tribulation of Yama, the number of experts in the Divine Prefecture fell from its peak to its lowest point. The remaining top experts were too heavily injured in the tribulation, and all of them went into seclusion. It was impossible for them to appear in the near future. On the West Earth, the cultivation of the Lords of the Divine Palace and the Demon Temple grew stronger and stronger. The Dragon Gate behind them had completely solidified, surpassing the level that ordinary peak experts could reach. As the two of them grew stronger, the day of the 5 regions merging was getting closer and closer. To truly take the last step, heaven and earth had to be complete, and pulling back the East region was imminent. In the Divine Prefecture, Great Xia, which had lost 1,000 years of fortune, was already at the end of its days. The martial marquises guarding the various regions had died in battle, and the defense of the entire empire was almost non-existent. In front of benefits that were within reach, the hearts of people became extremely terrifying. In many cities, several city lords who had troops repeatedly disobeyed the orders of the imperial court. Their intention to rebel couldn't be more obvious. A month later, the 9 city lords who had been plotting for a long time finally couldn't hide their ambitions anymore. With the excuse of saving the emperor, they sent troops up north and openly rebelled. When it rains, it pours. After the 9 cities rebelled, another 3 cities rejected the imperial court's orders to mobilize troops. In just half a month, the rebel army consecutively broke through 5 major cities, and was less than 1,000 miles away from the imperial capital of Great Xia. The era of Great Xia is over. Those with discerning eyes in the Divine Prefecture could see that the change of dynasties was difficult to reverse. After the tribulation of Yama, Great Xia's 1,000 years of foundation had been exhausted. The once invincible empire had finally reached its end. No one could deny that in this divine tribulation, the Great Xia Empire had made the most indelible contribution to the survival of the Divine Prefecture. They had paid a heavy price by sacrificing all of their peak combat power to send the Lord of Hell back to the 7 ultimate heavens. However, people's hearts were fickle, and only benefits were the eternal truth. Knowing destiny saw through everything, so he would never be swayed by other people's joy, anger, hatred, or resentment. He stuck to his beliefs and had no regrets even in death. With Evernight destroyed and Great Xia in chaos, the Divine Prefecture had officially entered an era of independent rule. There were no longer any invincible dynasties, and the flames of war were everywhere. The Grand Xia Imperial City, after the Divine Tribulation, was once the #1 city under the heavens. But now, it was dilapidated to the extreme. The streets were crisscrossed with huge ravines, so deep that the bottom couldn't be seen. This was the reality of the Imperial City, and even more so, the portrayal of the entire world. Within the Imperial City, more than half of the people were dead or injured. Every house was hung with white silk. The Imperial army that guarded the Imperial City also suffered a devastating blow from the Divine Tribulation. There were not many survivors. "Empress, we can't hold on any longer." In the Weiyang Palace, Qing Ning looked at Zhang Sun, who was sitting on the sickbed with tears in her eyes. "Forget it, I won't fight anymore." Zhang Sun sighed deeply. Since someone wanted the throne, they would give it up. She was already tired, and the soldiers of Great Xia could no longer sacrifice themselves needlessly. Report. At this moment, an urgent report came. The general was kneeling outside the Weiyang Palace, delivering the frontline battle report. The little eunuch took the battle report and hurriedly delivered it to Zhang Xuan's bedroom, not daring to tarry for even a moment. Qing Ning went forward to take it and quickly walked back, handing it to Zhang Sun, who was lying on the sickbed. The sealed letter had not been removed yet. Zhang Sun braced himself and tore open the seal. After reading it carefully, he handed it to Qing Ning. "Take a look," Zhang Sun said tiredly. Qing Ning took the letter with a puzzled expression. After reading it, her expression changed. The content of the letter was very simple, but it was indeed a shocking matter. Emperor Beimeng was personally leading a 150,000 army down south. When the letter was delivered, they had already passed Yangue City. Now, they were probably not far from Tianmen Pass. Qing Ning could not hide the shock in her heart. The empress did not ask for help from Beimeng. Furthermore, personal feelings could not decide anything between dynasties. Since they were not reinforcements, the purpose of Beimeng's army going down south was very obvious. They were invading. Ningchen has taught an incredible emperor. Zhang Sun sighed softly. He did not look too surprised. For this little emperor to wait until today to send out his troops, he could already be considered extremely benevolent. Great Xia's luck had run out, and they could not hold on any longer. To Beimeng, this was the best opportunity, a good opportunity to pacify the world. Report. Outside Weiyang Palace, another urgent report came in. The little eunuch who delivered the letter quickly walked over and delivered the letter. The information in the letter was similar to the previous one. The barbarian dynasty had also sent out troops. The barbarian crown prince was leading a 100,000-strong army to the north and would reach the central plains of Great Xia in a few days. In the Divine Prefecture, other than the former Great Xia, the two strongest dynasties had already sent out troops. This meant that the day of Great Xia's destruction was really not far away. Qing Ning, the Divine Prefecture is very likely to be unified, Zhang Sun said weakly. Qing Ning was slightly stunned when she heard this. She could not understand the deeper meaning of Zhang Xuan's words. When the world is divided for a long time, it must unite for a long time. The destruction of the Eternal Night sect and the division of Great Xia has given Beimeng and the barbarian dynasty the best opportunity. The rebel army in Great Xia will not be able to do anything. The final winner will be between Beimeng and the barbarian dynasty. After saying this, Zhang Sun took a short break and continued to explain. Beimeng and the barbarian dynasty suffered less damage than Great Xia in the calamity of Yama. It can be said that the two strongest dynasties in the Divine Prefecture are Beimeng and the barbarian dynasty. Comparatively, Beimeng's imperial court is obviously stronger. Therefore, they have the best chance of unifying the world. Empress, is there really no way to salvage the situation in Great Xia? Qing Ning's expression flashed with sadness as she asked. Zhang Sun shook her head tiredly and said, "It's very difficult and there's no need. It's just a matter of time." Great Xia's territory was too big. After suffering such a great calamity, it was already impossible to defend it. Especially after the death of the martial marquises of Great Xia, the deterrence hanging over the hearts of the various factions of Great Xia disappeared. The rebellion was already expected. Great Xia no longer had the power to unify the fragmented territory again. The day of a change of dynasty would come sooner or later. While the Divine Prefecture was in chaos, in the homeland of West Buddha, in the Divine Palace and the Demon Temple, two unusually powerful auras were getting more and more terrifying by the day. They were very close to taking the final step. "Demon Buddha, are you ready?" In the Divine Palace, a cold and arrogant voice came out, crossing thousands of miles and reaching the Demon Temple. "We can do it at any time," the Demon Buddha in the Demon Temple replied. "Then let's begin." As the voice fell, at the highest point of the Divine Palace, the huge palace door opened. A figure shining with purple light walked out. The heavy pressure made all things fall. It was powerful and terrifying. At the same time, in the demon temple, the demon Buddha also walked out. His aura was not inferior to the Lord of the Divine Palace. The demonic power of Buddha made people feel cold all over. The two venerables joined forces, and the Dragon Gate appeared between heaven and earth. The powerful force penetrated heaven and earth and reached the foreign domain. In the divine prefecture, heaven and earth trembled. The rumbling sound resounded through the eastern region. The four corners divine pagoda showed its divine power and pulled the ground below toward the direction of the four domains. The indescribably terrifying scene shocked the whole world. No one knew what had happened, and they could not change anything. They could only watch the ground rise and move toward an unknown direction. In the southwest territory of the divine prefecture, Nu Chang's face darkened. She looked at the homeland of West Buddha in the distance, and her eyes flashed with coldness. This was good. With the 5 regions united, she could use the power of the original body to wake up the Marquis and obtain the Book of Life and the other heavenly tomes. 500 miles south of Yangue City, the northern Meng army stopped. In front of the terrifying tremors, the warhorses kept neighing and were difficult to control. In front of 90,000 cavalrymen, Mingyu, dressed in martial attire, dismounted. Looking at the divine prefecture brought by the Four Corners Divine Pagoda, her eyes were full of coldness. The foreign domain's movements were getting bigger and bigger. She also had to speed up. The situation of Great Xia was irreversible. Instead of chaos, it was better to take down Great Xia before it happened and end this war. The tremors continued for an hour. When it finally stopped, the world returned to normal. It was as if nothing had happened. Just when everyone thought that it was over, an earth-shattering rumble shook the sky. The entire eastern domain shook, and at the end of the world, a huge piece of land crashed into the spatial barrier that separated the 5 regions. In the next moment, the most terrifying scene occurred. Space collapsed, and an endless amount of seawater poured in from the foreign domain, causing the entire eastern region to float. The 5 regions that had been separated for over 30,000 years were finally united. The southern tomb, the western earth, the central plains, and the northern plains all sensed it at the same time. Their experts all looked toward the east in shock. In the central plains, in the depths of the Zhao family's territory, the Zhao family's experts opened their eyes and looked toward the east. There's still a Bao left in the eastern region. We need to send people to retrieve it, said one of the Zhao family's grand elders. Let Dongyang go. It's a good chance for him to temper himself, said another grand elder. In the northern plains, where snow filled the sky, there was a palace built on top of ice and snow. A cold voice rang out, echoing for hundreds of miles. Pass down my order. From today onwards, all disciples who are training outside must return within 10 days. There must be no delays. Yes. In the southern tomb, many mysterious ancient inheritances also took action. They sent out orders to prepare for the return of the eastern region. In the divine prefecture, the great earthquake stopped. People who had not realized what kind of earth-shattering event had happened breathed a sigh of relief. Only a few people who knew the inside story had a serious look on their faces. They understood that the real trouble had just begun. With the 5 regions united, the divine prefecture was undoubtedly the weakest region. No one knew what the future would be like. Speed up the march, ordered Mingyu coldly in the northern plains of Great Xia. The 4 generals obeyed. After the order was given, the entire army immediately moved out and sped up. The successive changes came and went quickly. Very few people knew what had happened, and most people were still in the dark. However, at this moment, the divine prefecture needed to unite as soon as possible to face the unpredictable troubles in the future more than ever. Chapter 402. The flames of war were everywhere in the divine continent. More and more cities rebelled. The barbarian dynasty and northern Meng sent out their troops from the north and south at the same time. The era of Grand Xia had come to an end. A divine tribulation had destroyed Evernight, and Grand Xia had withered away. The situation of two great powers standing on equal footing was now a thing of the past. The divine prefecture was now in a state of fragmentation. War raged everywhere, and the people had no way to make a living. Mingyu led 150,000 soldiers down south. The 90,000 cavalry were invincible, trampling over all obstacles. Neither the rebels nor the defenders could stop them. Mingyu was good at fighting but not fond of fighting. As the emperor of the northern Ming dynasty who had been taught by Fan Lingyue and Ning Chen, his understanding of war was not something ordinary people could reach. With the help of the four generals, the speed at which he went down south was shockingly fast. The northern Ming dynasty was different from the Great Xia in the central plains. The grasslands in the north were vast and sparsely populated. They were a nomadic fighting race. The destruction they suffered from this divine tribulation did not affect their foundation. Today, there was no dynasty in the world that could stop the powerful cavalry of the northern Ming dynasty. The barbarian dynasty also knew this fact, so they were doing their best to expand and plunder war resources to strengthen themselves. The teacher's prophecy was about to come true. The destruction of the Great Xia was close at hand. Without the appearance of the nobles, the soldiers of the Great Xia were at a disadvantage in both numbers and morale. Although Marquis Anling had the title of Martial Marquis, everyone knew that the true Martial Marquis of the Great Xia had all died in battle during the tribulation of the Underworld King. The Martial Marquis of the Great Xia that had shocked the world for 1,000 years no longer existed. It's hard to believe that such a declining dynasty could hold on for 1,000 years. In the war-torn Great Xia, merchants dressed differently from the people of the Divine Continent appeared one after another. The young man in the lead was wearing luxurious clothes. His eyes were a rare dark green. One could tell at a glance that he was a rich young master from a foreign country. "Young master, what you see may not be the truth," a stooped old man beside the young man warned softly. "Ah, Uncle Ling is right. However, we're only here to do business. Earning enough money is the most important thing. Everything else is not important to us," Xian Liangchen laughed and said carelessly. "Only by earning money can you redeem Miss Susu of the White Knight building. Isn't that right, young master?" Beside him, a young man dressed like a servant joked. "Ah Chi, you're so young, but you're already so bad. I like Miss Jechi." "I don't know Miss Susu you're talking about." Xian Liangchen deliberately pulled a long face and said softly. The young man named Achi wasn't afraid. He grinned and didn't believe a single punctuation mark of his young master's words. "Speaking of the eastern region, it's a bit messy, but there are really a lot of rare things, especially this thing called soap. It's simply shining silver." Xian Liangchen's serious expression did not last for more than 3 seconds. When it came to silver, his face was full of smiles, and he was so happy that no one knew where to go. "I heard that it was invented by a Marquis of Great Xia." Ah Chi also said with a grin. "Marquis Jiming," the old man said calmly. "Yes, the Marquis of Jiming." "Ah, Uncle Ling, how do you remember him so clearly?" A look of surprise flashed across Achi's face. Didn't Uncle Ling never care about these things? Young Master Xian was also curious about this. He turned his face and waited for the answer. However, the old man fell silent and didn't say anything more. The curiosity of the two was stuck in their throats. It was itchy, but they couldn't catch it. The two young men raised their middle fingers at the same time in their hearts, but neither of them dared to show it. They still had idiotic smiles on their faces. Their smiles were so annoying. At the same time, in the southwest territory of the Divine Land, Niu Chong had been looking for Feng Yuan for more than a month. She had almost turned the whole southwest territory upside down, but she still hadn't found it. "Has the host been found?" Niu Chong frowned. Now this was the only explanation. Otherwise, she should have been able to find Feng Yuan's aura. Troublesome. She thought for a moment, then took a step forward and rose into the air. Her body rose to the extreme, and a terrifying aura that was close to the Xiantian full circle spread out. The powerful pressure made all living creatures within 100 miles tremble. Soul of the dead. With a cold shout, a terrifying move came crashing down. In an instant, all the creatures within 100 miles exploded. Blood rained down and dyed the sky red. Without Feng Yuan, tens of thousands of creatures were buried with it. Niu Chang's spiritual sense swept over and didn't find anything unusual. She immediately left and went to other places to search. On this day, rivers of blood flowed in the southwest territory of the Divine Land. Apart from humans, almost all the creatures were wiped out. Everywhere one looked was a dazzling red. Phoenixes were noble and prideful, and hated humans. Therefore, the last host it would choose was a human. Niu Chang didn't know how Zhi Ming was recognized by Feng Yuan, but this kind of exception wouldn't appear again. Found it. Just as the moon was high in the sky, a trace of golden light appeared in the rain of blood. Niu Chang narrowed her eyes and rushed forward. She waved her hand and suppressed Feng Yuan. Zhi Ming, you're not fated to die. Feeling the remnant soul in Feng Yuan, Niu Chang's heart relaxed. She took a step and flew east. With this remnant soul and the power of the soul-suppressing orb, she might be able to save him. In order to save this person, she had paid a huge price. She couldn't fail. At the old site of the academy, Niu Chang appeared. She waved her hand to disperse the restriction outside the wooden house and walked in. Under the soul-suppressing orb, Zhi Ming was sleeping peacefully. In order to resist the Nether King, he sacrificed his lifespan. His white hair was dazzling. He had been running around for his entire life, and this was the only time he could stop and rest. Niu Chang walked forward and condensed her essence into Zhi Ming's body. When the Feng Yuan entered the body, a rejection appeared. It wasn't that Feng Yuan didn't want to recognize its master, but the rejection from the body made it difficult to merge with the Feng Yuan. In the past, with the power of the life scroll, he could forcefully suppress the rejection. However, in the Battle of Qizhou Mountain, in order to deal with the threat of the Nether King's dual Qi Seas, Ning Chen used a forbidden move. Niu Chang frowned again. Trouble came one after another. She didn't know how the knowing destiny Marquis had endured this pain in the past. Vital essence entered, and a majestic aura suppressed the rejection from the Feng Yuan and the knowing destiny physique. At the same time, in the homeland of Western Buddha, Chongling, a terrifying aura walked out. In the next moment, it headed east. Niu Chang appeared. In the homeland of Western Buddha, many perfected cultivators felt it and showed strange expressions. In the Eastern Divine Lands, an ancient sage-level cultivator came in person. The terrifying pressure shocked the world and made people think that the Nether King had come again. The figure of light whose face couldn't be seen clearly stood at the top of the human race. Accompanied by apparitions, her peerless beauty made it hard for people to look away. The most mysterious Chongling Niu Chang of the West Earth rarely appeared. Today, in order to replenish knowing destiny's remnant soul, she appeared. When Niu Chang attacked, the divine lands shook. Streams of light gathered in the academy from all directions. The soul-suppressing orb was extremely bright and forcefully gathered the remnant soul of knowing destiny. Crack! A moment later, a crack appeared on the soul-suppressing orb. The act of replenishing the soul against the heavens was not tolerated by the world. The treasure of Chongling couldn't bear such a huge burden and gradually showed signs of collapse. In a bet, Niu Chang saved knowing destiny's life at all costs. No one knew the result, but in order to take the next step after perfection, the price had to be paid. As time passed, more and more cracks appeared on the soul-suppressing orb. Finally, with a bang, the treasure collapsed and disappeared. The number of remnant souls gathered was unknown. Niu Chang looked at knowing destiny who was still unconscious on the bed. Light flashed in her eyes. She had tried her best. Whether he could wake up or not depended on his luck. In the next moment, the terrifying pressure that descended on the divine lands left and returned to the homeland of Western Buddha. Niu Chang appeared in the Marquis manner. After sending knowing destiny back, she disappeared again. At dawn, Ruoshi came to Ning Chen's room to clean as usual. When she saw the sleeping figure on the bed, her delicate body trembled violently and the wooden basin in her hand fell with a clang. Marquis! She ignored her soaked clothes and quickly stepped forward to check on Ning Chen's condition. In the room next door, Ning Shi heard the movement from next door and immediately rushed over. The scene in front of her was unbelievable. Ning Chen's breath was stable and long. Although he hadn't woken up yet, his life was obviously not in danger. Outside the Marquis manor, Nu Chang quietly looked at the manor. Perhaps, this person will wake up faster here. In the homeland of Western Buddha, a man, who had been unconscious for a long time, woke up earlier than Ning Chen. Sitting on the bed, she looked at the black medicine brought by the little monk in front of her and was unwilling to drink it. "Senior, I'm already well. Can I not drink it?" A man turned her small head and looked at the man in blue not far away. "No." Prince Yen directly denied without thinking. "Oh." A man's small face was bitter. She reluctantly responded and took the medicine in front of her. Gathering her courage, she closed her eyes and drank it all in one breath. "Bitter." A man put down the medicine bowl and looked at Prince Yen again. Prince Yen helplessly stepped forward and handed over a pear. In this world, only this little girl dared to order him around. "Thank you, senior." A man took the pear and smiled sweetly. Her bright and beautiful face made the little monk on the side look dazed. After he recovered, he hurriedly chanted Amitabha. "Buddha, please don't blame me. Little benefactor man, how is your recovery?" At this time, the golden light gathered and the light sage appeared. Holding the holy staff, he calmed the smoke. Stepping on the Buddhist light, he looked too young no matter when you looked at him. "I'm already well." A man replied. Looking at the young light sage and the bald little monk in front of her, her eyes flashed with a touch of doubt. Why can a monk not have a head? The little girl's thoughts were so obvious that it was difficult to not guess. The light sage smiled gently. If the hearts of the people in the world were as clean as the little girl in front of him, perhaps that Hell King would not come again. You're tuning into the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.